So this police officer comes and he goes, I have witness reports that say you were going, you know, X amount of miles per hour. You kid, I'm gonna make sure you go to jail. Like, I'm gonna make sure that they press charges and you're going to jail because you should not be on the street.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Prophetic Mentality Podcast. Today we have a very special guest, Southern California's very own Shaykh Mustafa Umar. A little bit about Shaykh Mustafa for those of you that don't know him. Shaykh Mustafa spent some years studying Islam in the East. He spent time in Nadwat al-Ulama in Lucknow, India, and Al-Azhar in Cairo, Egypt. Shaykh Mustafa holds bachelor's degrees in theology and Islamic law from the European Institute of Islamic Sciences and a master's of Islamic studies from the University of Gloucestershire. He is the current education director at the Islamic Institute of Orange County and founder of the California Islamic University. As always, links to our guest's social media and about pages are included below in the description if you're watching on YouTube, or in the podcast description if you're listening through your favorite podcast app. Now on to the good stuff. We originally scheduled with the Shaykh about 1 hour to discuss the topic of masculinity in Islam. However, we ended up recording for almost 4 hours with the Shaykh. Honestly, the time just flew by. So, since the recording was so long, we decided to split up this episode into 2 parts. In part 1, what you're listening to or watching right now, we go into the Shaykh's personal story on how he ended up on the path of knowledge. And let me tell you now, it's a pretty crazy story. And Shaykh Mustafa is an amazing storyteller. He had me engaged in cracking up the whole time. In part 2, we get into the topic of masculinity in Islam, and we discuss some relevant legislation that has currently gone into effect in California. And that's all I'm going to say because you're going to have to watch this one for yourselves. Recording this episode was delightful in every way, so I hope you too enjoy listening to it as well. Assalamu alaikum, and on with the show. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another episode of the Prophetic Mentality Podcast. Today I'm joined by my co-host Munir, and we are joined by a very special guest, Shaykh Mustafa Umar from Orange County. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh.
Wa alaikum salam.
How are you doing today?
Doing excellent.
Alhamdulillah. Today we wanted to have you on to discuss the certain topic of masculinity in Islam. Inshallah, we want to get into that a little bit later, but first I wanted to kind of touch base on your journey to getting where you are now. I know your journey to Islam and being a sheikh is probably not as linear as most would think. So can we probably get into that a little bit first?
Sure. Where should we start?
High school?
High school. Alhamdulillah. All right. So high school, yeah, I went to public school. I went to Tustin High School.
Okay.
You know, kind of my mentality was, the way that I was raised, kind of semi-culturally practicing Muslim. We probably never prayed outside Jummah prayer.
Okay.
When it was convenient, right? Because I'm in school, so obviously not happening that much. We'd go for Eid prayer. So not really much Islam.
So like Eid Muslims.
Kind of like Eid Muslims, but maybe like one notch above. Sometimes Jummah Muslims, like, you know. So yeah, so a little bit one notch. We weren't that bad. You know? So that basically meant that most of my friends were non-Muslims. Right? Okay. So my Muslim friends were only pretty much like at parties. Either I'd have like a Hindu friend or a Muslim friend because my parents socialized with those people. Mm-hmm. Other than that, I really wouldn't see anyone else. So almost all my friends are non-Muslims. All my things that I do and people I hang out with, everything else is pretty much influenced by non-Muslims. So that's kind of what high school was for me. And then what happened was in high school, probably somewhere around junior year, we went on a family trip to Mecca. Okay. And when I came back from Mecca, that was like a huge thing for me because I'd never seen Mecca before. It was like a huge cultural shock. You know, adhan 5 times a day, this and that, you're going to the masjid. So I actually became kind of interested in Islam a little bit after doing Umrah and visiting Mecca for the first time. So I came back and I started like, you know, I want to take this Islam thing, you know, seriously. Mm-hmm. So I started praying a little bit more. Mm-hmm. I started, you know, telling my friends, you know, Islam is this, Islam is correct, and Islam is an awesome religion. But it was kind of like my own version of Islam.
Whatever you kind of perceive from the culture that you kind of...
No, not only that. So the thing is, I didn't really like the culture. So I was kind of a very anti-culture kind of guy.
Okay. Yeah.
So for me, if I'm going to practice Islam, it's got to make sense to me. So I got a Quran translation, and anything that kind of made sense to me, I'd be like, yeah, this is what Islam says. If it didn't make sense to me, I'd be like, I don't want it.
So it's an individual education.
Very individualized, to the point where I'm like, you know what, it doesn't make sense. We're going to pray in Arabic, right? Because I don't know what I'm saying. So I'm just going to pray in English. So I started praying in English. You know, if I'm late for school, you know, I used to drive to school, junior. I'm like, you know, oh, it's okay. Allah will understand. I'm just going to pray while I'm driving to school, you know, but in English. So it's just kind of like this custom-made version of Islam that I kind of got into initially. Eventually, it led to like rejecting hadith too. So I'm like, oh, these hadith don't make sense. So Quran only Muslim. So Quran only, English, prayer type of Muslim. That's where it got to, like around high school.
I mean, that's where people are nowadays. Most of
that's
the time.
where people. Yeah, so
you're an OG.
So for me, it's like
you were ahead of the curve, actually.
Exactly. I'm like, you guys are doing something like that's way back in the days, man. Like, been there, done that, you know. So for me, it's like, you know, you guys aren't doing anything original, you know. So that was high school, right?
Okay.
And then from high school, basically, I go into college, and then in my first year in college, I attend this class on philosophy, and this class basically breaks down my entire worldview.
Of course.
And I basically stopped believing in God, and I end up becoming an atheist.
Was it like just an intro to philosophy course?
It was an intro to philosophy course. It was a critical thinking course specifically. I still remember the book. The book was called How to Think About Weird Things. And it got like from quotes from like Aristotle, and it talks about like, it's a very modern analysis of American society. So that's the thing that really got to me. It's like I was always very skeptical about, you know, people always making claims, jinn, you know, everything is jinn related, everything is spiritual related. You know, people believe in all sorts of things, and they always attribute those things to something else. So I've been, you know, generally raised with like a type of skepticism. So when the teacher started talking about, you know, this many Americans still believe in Santa Claus, and I was just like, they really believe in this? Is stupid, you know. And then they started talking about, oh, they believe in the tooth fairy. And like for me, it's like almost like a trauma. It's like, you know, why was I lied to that, you know, there's a tooth fairy? Like I don't do this. I don't want to do this to my own kids, right?
Yeah.
Like this idea of, oh, look, there's a tooth fairy, and then all of a sudden, oh yeah, well, by the way, we just made that up to, you know, to make you feel good. But then you're like, well, wait a minute. If my parents lied to me about these things, what other things did they lie to me about? It creates a sense of skepticism, or maybe that's just my personality.
No, I think that goes well with kids, because they're very easily, they'll perceive these things and they'll take it on as a reality very easily.
Exactly.
You know, they'll just believe it because they have that fitra.
Exactly.
And then when you break it,
and once you break the trust, right, and they've trusted you, right? You break that trust. When they find it out, they start thinking, wait a minute, is this the only thing that they have lied to me about? And then you start questioning, and when they've lied to you about a lot of things, it causes a lot of problems. You know.
So you said this philosophy class really hit you hard, and I hear that a lot. You know, a lot of kids, they go to a quote unquote philosophy class, and it breaks them down. What? So I don't think we went to a philosophy course our freshman year or anything. Right. And I'm always skeptical, like, what could they possibly tell you that breaks down a man to like, oh, this is all, is it just so much confusion, or they slip in the ideas with, oh, people believe in Santa Claus, Tooth Fairy, and God, and it's all in the same conversation?
That's exactly what happened. So basically, it was in the exact same conversation. I remember it very clearly. They slip it in. So they're like, you know, people still believe in the Tooth Fairy. Oh, people still believe in fairies. And they put the statistics, so it looks very scientific. It's like this many people, some survey somewhere, this many percentage of Americans believe in fairies. I'm like, come on, they believe in like little fairies, like from Peter Pan or something like that. And then they go, and this many people believe in angels. So I'm kind of like,
that's the next step.
There's the next step. So I'm kind of like shaky. I'm like, well, I am believing in Islam. I guess we kind of do believe in angels, but then the way they're portrayed in society, do they really look like that? Maybe it's overdone. So you start to get to that level, and then they go, and then this many percentage of people still, look at the word, still believe in God, right? So I'm hearing that, still believe in God, and I'm in a state of confusion now. I'm like, wait a minute. So what do you mean still? I go in there, my perception, you know, 1990, late 90s, early 2000, is people in America believe in God. Like, that's my understanding, right? I assumed that even my non-Muslim friends, whatever religion they are, they still believe in God.
They believe in something.
They believe in some kind of higher power or something like that. So I go in there, so the teacher is kind of like hinting, and obviously it's pretty clear he's an atheist, but I didn't know that. right? So most people don't know what their religious persuasions of their own teachers are. So I go in there, this guy's definitely an atheist, but I don't recognize that. So then he goes and he asks this question. He goes, how many of you still believe in God? Right? So he goes, just raise your hand. How many of you still believe in God? So this is what broke everything for me. Because I'm putting my hand up, and there's only one guy in the whole class who puts his hand up. And that guy is like the super annoying missionary guy who knocks on your door on a Sunday morning that no one wants to associate with. He's like the most annoying guy in the world, the guy who's like the Bible thumper, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just looking, I'm like, wait a minute, something is wrong here. Am I like that guy? And that I was just like,
hey, you want to be cool?
That just messed up everything for me. And then from there, it was just a down trajectory. Yeah.
So it started in college. Freshman year in college. That's kind of. Yeah. And what kind of were you involved with, or where'd you go to school first? I should ask.
College. I went to UCI Irvine.
UCI. Okay. Yeah, UCI. And did you join the MSA at all during that time?
It's an interesting story about MSA. So this is happening in freshman year.
Yeah.
I'm living on campus. Even though my parents live in Tustin, I'm like living in Irvine on campus. Like
that's very common actually. A lot of first years they just end up living on campus.
So yeah, I insisted. I'm like, I need to live on campus. You know, okay. So I want my freedom from parents, and I want to be independent and all that stuff. So I'm living on campus. I don't know a single Muslim. Right? There's I don't know a single Muslim on campus. All of my friends in the dorms are all non-Muslims, which is direct trajectory of where I was in high school, anyways.
And for the listeners, actually, UCI, there's a huge Muslim MSA population.
Yes,
there's a big number of people there.
Yes.
It's not a small time school.
Yes, exactly. Yes, there's a lot of Muslims, but I was not affiliated with them at all. So I'm not cultural either. So I'm not affiliated with like the Pakistani Student Association or whatever is there, or any of these cultural clubs. So then all of a sudden I'm walking down campus one day, and someone kind of notices me, and they're like, hey, what's your name? I'm like, Mustafa, and he's like, hey, are you Muslim? I'm like, yeah.
On Fridays?
Like, yeah. At that time, I was just like, yeah, kind of. You should join the MSA. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's like the Muslim Students Association. So at that time, I was just like, I don't want to have anything to do with you guys, right? So someone saw me, they tried to recruit me, and I was just like, look, not interested. And the guy like really, tried to push me eagerly. He's like, come on, it'll be really good. You're gonna make new friends and this and that. I'm like, I'm not interested in that stuff, So that was my one experience of trying to get recruited. So I was not part of MSA at all. And the second thing was that I was walking by one day, and there was like a protest for Palestine taking place.
Of course.
All right, and the guys were like, yelling and free Palestine and this and that. And I'm walking by, and someone kind of sees me, and they're like, hey, you look kind of like you're Muslim or something, come over here and join us, and there's like basically there's Zionists on this side, and there's like Palestinian MSA on this side. So like, come on this side, join us, So I'm just like, what's going? And I had been to Jerusalem before, right? So I know, what it's like, but I didn't really know much about the issue outside, like from a religious perspective. I just know the political perspective. So I'm just like, no, you guys seem to be like yelling and screaming, and like, you don't seem to be very objective, So I'm like, no, I don't want to really join you guys. Like, if you guys are a little bit more quiet, like, I know I've been to Jerusalem, but it's like what you guys are doing, like, no, man, I'm not interested. And then so
it's a bad look for me. I already got affiliated with the missionary guy. I can't.
Yeah, because again, like one of the things about philosophy, right? It's like the ideal Socrates type philosopher.
Was that your major, by the way?
No, that was not my major. It was just like a kind of like a interest and a passion.
You did comp sci, didn't you?
I did comp sci, computer science. Okay. Yeah, computer science. But so I'm very, very into like science and this and that. So they kind of overlap, hard sciences and stuff like that. So for me, it was like the ideal thinker, objective person who's not being biased. I'm against this bias that kind of I grew up with. Cultural bias, people are religious bias, this and that. So it's like you should be very calm and poised and relaxed and explain your argument rather than emotionally yelling or screaming. So that was my mentality at the time. So I went through, and I still think there's some validity to that. Sometimes depending on where you are. But I walked through, and I'm like, I don't want to be any part of this. And those were my two experiences with Muslims on campus for like my entire freshman year.
Wow.
That's it. I've never encountered anyone else outside of that.
And do you ever go back to that, or do you ever join the MSA at all?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
so yeah, when I come back to Islam, so the irony is when I join MSA, I join MSA, and the same guy who was recruiting me, there's two guys.
Yeah.
Same guy who's recruiting me, they become my close friends. They're also in computer science, and then I end up becoming their teacher. So that's the irony. So I'm teaching a class, and there's students in my class, and they're like, "Remember 2 years ago when we tried to recruit you?" And you're like, "Just get away from me." He's like, "Can you imagine like this would have happened? Like you end up becoming our teacher, and you're giving the khutbah on campus, and we're sitting in front of you. Like we could have never imagined that. Like we thought we're like the Muslim guys. We're trying to recruit this guy. This guy's running away from us, and now like the whole situation flipped. He's like, this is how Allah changes, things.
Wow. Yeah. So what kind of guides you back? I mean, you seem like you're pretty adamant at this point. A lot of people don't really bounce back from that, unless there's some experience they go through or some sort of something happens.
Based on mortality.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah. So that played a role, although I don't like to say that, I don't like to say this is the specific thing, right? Everything is a process in my understanding. There's a process of going away from Islam. There's a process of coming towards Islam. It's not like just one thing just triggers all of a sudden. But the process was kind of brewing in me in terms of like the lifestyle that I was living. I started going to nightclubs. I got into electronica music.
Oh, that's big in the early 2000s.
Yeah, exactly. So I had like a friend. He was.
Did you shuffle?
No. No. But I had an Armenian friend who pretty much got me into this, and he's a DJ now. So he was computer science, switched to music, and now he's like a professional DJ. We're still in touch. So he got me into this music. He's like, this is the most intellectual music. Because I used to listen to at that time I was listening to like alternative, listening to like rock, stuff like that. Before that I had listened to, rap. When I was younger, I listened to like, what else? Like dance and, Kiss FM type of stuff and all that. So at that phase, I was like at rock, basically, alternative rock, things like that. And he's like, no, you're in the wrong genre, man. You need to, you seem like a pretty smart guy. You seem like a guy who values like intellectual, all that stuff. The most intellectual music is electronica, like trance.
Tiesto.
I don't know Tiesto.
Oh, you don't Tiesto? No. Was he big in the 2000s? Okay, but he's like EDM essentially, right? Electronic dance music.
Electronic dance music, but with all its variations. Like Goa trance to like happy hardcore to like everything, all the way to like gabber.
You were. I don't even know what you're talking about.
I know what you're. So, but since you're into like recording and stuff, so it's like it goes by beats per minute, right? Okay. So it's like it depends. If you're getting to like 140, you're at a certain type, like happy hardcore. Once it gets to 180, you're like at what's called hardcore or gabber, and then you get to 220, it's just like it's noise basically.
So you're just crazy.
You're just like crazy. Yeah, exactly. So what happens? It's kind of like I started this, progression, getting into all of this stuff. And I thought it's like, it's more intellectual and stuff like that. So I get into this music, and that obviously leads me to like going to raves. So I started going into raves, and then going.
By the way, those at that time, they're not like what you see today. They're like in the underground, right?
Were they? They were, there's desert raves and stuff like that. Yeah, the underground, like they're kind of outside, but they're not that much different. I don't think it's changed that much actually.
Okay.
But yeah, so I started going to raves and stuff like that, primarily for the music, but obviously there's an entire culture that comes with that.
Yeah.
So I started hanging around with some people who are doing that, and I wasn't feeling comfortable because at the same time I'm still struggling internally. I'm like, you know what? I'm still not gonna drink alcohol. All right. So I'm not gonna drink alcohol. Not because I'm Muslim anymore, but just it's going to impair my intellect, right? So I have this idea of like, I don't want to mess up my mind, right?
Yeah.
And I don't want to be doing like, a bunch of drugs or something like that, because that's going to mess up my mind too. So I saw some of these guys who are like raving, like they're really messed up, because they've been dropping, doing ecstasy basically. And I'm concerned about that because I'm like, I value my mind. I value like computer science, and like this guy can't even program anymore. Like, seriously, like because I had a
like after he was high, he just messed himself up.
Yeah, he's messed himself. Long term. So we had a professor at UC Irvine, computer science department. I'll tell you, his name was Dr. Klefstadt. Okay, this guy, half of his class, he just talked about drugs. He would promote drugs. Like this, it's a weird guy. Basically.
He's tenured, I'm sure.
Yeah, he's definitely he's tenured. Right, he's still there. I checked. I looked him up recently. Ironically,
still functioning brain cells.
This guy would just promote. He's like, and there's legal ways to do it. And you could buy ephedra, and it's like buying speed, and it's really good. It helps you program, and I don't know why people talk bad about drugs. And this is like in the early 2000s, before this whole marijuana, recreational discussions going on. This guy was like, he was the coolest teacher, but he was the most ineffective teacher because he wouldn't teach us anything except about drugs, right? So he's talking to some of these students who are basically dropping at raves regularly,
and they're like, yeah,
and I know, and they're like, yeah, I've been doing it, and he's like, yeah, but you got to be really careful because if you do it too much, it will mess up your memory and it's gonna mess up your mind. And then the guy's like, yeah, I think I can't remember things and I have this problem. He's like, oh, it looked like you already overdid it, you should have been careful. So I'm listening to this, and I'm like, whoa, I don't want to, I like the music, but I don't want to end up like this guy. This guy can't even remember anything,
Wow.
This guy was like dropping like every weekend, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dropping meaning like taking ecstasy,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So rolling, whatever.
They call it rolling.
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 Dropping would be like LSD or something like that.
Drop acid.
Yeah, so drop acid. So so that's kind of where I am.
Is that a computer science thing? Because I knew some computer science people back in school. They're also Muslim too, and they drop acid and take shrooms.
I don't think it's a computer science thing. I think computer science people generally tend to be more isolated. A little bit like stick to themselves, because they're on their computer kind of by themselves. So their social life is a little bit less. And that kind of inclines them more towards this kind of culture because it's more of an individualistic culture.
Got it.
You're not in a rave dancing with someone else like you would be like in a nightclub, right? You're in a rave basically dancing by yourself, primarily listening to the music. You may end up with someone else because, you're high or something, but it's more of an individualistic type thing.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my theory.
So, that makes sense.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm doing this, and then I'm kind of debating back and forth between, should I continue this? Something is not right with this lifestyle. I'm becoming very materialistic. So this is just an internal struggle going on. It's hard to, recollect all the thoughts that were going through my mind.
But there was definitely some sort of you could say agitation.
There was
internal agitation.
There was agitation. I'm like, is this what life is about? Is this, is this what I'm supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
So kind of those thoughts are going through. Sometimes I just think this is dumb. The people I'm hanging out with, they're making dumb jokes, and I'm just laughing at it. I'm like, we're being dumb.
Empty conversation.
Empty conversation. Yeah. It's just there's no real purpose behind. There's no substance behind it.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of getting to me and bothering me a little bit. And then I got into street racing.
What?
Street racing. So simultaneously I get into street racing basically. So I know it's kind of
you're really trying to preserve your intellect.
So it's the company that you keep, right? So somehow the company that I was keeping, they got me into street racing, right?
Okay.
And in a very dangerous fashion, right? So like street racing on the freeway, right? Which is
that sounds ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. It's really dumb and it's really dangerous. But again, it's that peer pressure,
Okay.
So I get a brand new car, Lexus IS 300, like the same month it came out. It was like a really big thing. My parents get that for me, and I start racing, and I'm learning, what to do and this and that. So yeah, I mean, long story short, what ends up happening is I'm racing regularly, and one day I'm investing in the stock market with money that my parents gave me. I'm just getting frustrated with school. I'm getting frustrated with this culture. And then one day I just wake up and I decide, you know what? I remember that day was a Friday morning. That day I'm just like, you know what? I'm just pissed off. I'm just really upset. I'm sick and tired of all of this. And I just want to live my own life. I'm at home for that day for some reason. I came back from the dorm, and I wake up and I open E-Trade, and I look and I'm like, my investment of Juniper Network that I had invested during the .com bubble, it like went down 50%. Okay, it was like a stock market crash.
Yeah.
So I was just like furious, man. I was just like, I just lost a ton of money, and I was trading on margin on top of that. Like the one day I trade on margin, it's like I get killed.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm gonna get a margin call now. Lost all this money in the stock market. I'm just really upset. And then my parents are telling me, my mom calls me like downstairs. We live in a big house. She calls me downstairs and she's like, I want you to take out the trash. I'm just like, now I'm just at another level, right? I'm just like, look, my whole life I've never taken out the trash, right? Like we didn't really have many chores to do. So now all of a sudden she decides, like, on the day that the stock market crashes, somehow I'm gonna manifest my authority as a parent and tell my college age son that you need to go take out the trash. Okay, so she has a tafsir class happening at her house. So it's like the first time she's asking me to go take out the trash because all these women are going to come and do a tafsir class at her house. Right? So I get up and I'm like, you know what, man, just forget this. I'm done with this. I start, like, I put some clothes in my backpack. I check my accounts and everything. And I'm like, I'm running away from home. Like, I'm never coming back and I'm leaving. So I go, jump in my car.
You take out the trash?
I didn't take out the trash, no. I did not take out the trash. So I jump in my car and I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go, man. You know, turn it on and I'm like, I'm just gonna zoom out of here and done. And all of a sudden I start reversing and I realize one of these aunties, like, parked right behind my car. I can't even get out. So I was just, like, even more frustrated. So I go in the middle of the tafsir class and I remember, like, shouting at
some aunties,
at these aunties and the Quran teacher, who's Sister Maha, who still teaches around, you know, tafsir and stuff. So she's at my mom's house. She's at my house, basically. And those aunties, they come back and they remind me that we remember the day that you came and yelled at us. I was like, subhanallah, you know. And now they're, like, attending my khutbahs and they're my students and stuff, you know. So that day, I came and I yelled and I'm like, you know, someone needs to move their car because they parked behind me, right? So one of the aunties like, oh yeah, I didn't realize it was behind. I'll move the car. So she goes and moves the car. I get out. I'm still frustrated. I'm upset. I go and I start driving and I start driving, taking the 5 South. So I'm going down and I'm just kind of, like, heading towards San Diego, Mexico, right? And I'm like, I'm not coming back. I'm done. No family ever again. I'm just gonna be like a free, independent person. I'll do whatever I want. So I'm driving down. All of a sudden, 300 ZX twin turbo comes and cuts me off and gives me the racing signal, right? And I'm just like, you know, today of all days, today is the day you want to do this, right? And I was driving normal. I wasn't speeding, or I was just driving kind of normal. And all of a sudden this guy just kind of cuts me off and just gives me the signal, right? Which is the emergency lights, right?
What color was the car? Do you remember?
It was a white, yeah. I remember.
It was white?
Yeah,
okay.
white 300ZX. It wasn't you, was it?
No. I have a friend who drives a yellow one. I was like, maybe it was.
Yeah. So I'm going, and I'm about near Oceanside by that time. And I had
you're a ways away. That's like an hour drive.
Yeah, it's about an hour drive. Yeah. So I've been going for quite a while. I'm almost there, and I'm heading. I haven't even made a plan where I'm going to go. Either I'm going to get a hotel in San Diego, or I'm going to cross the border and just be in Mexico. Right? So I'm on my way. I'm like, I'll figure this out later. Music is blasting, right? I got, like, Blink 182 on, and just, like, the songs that kind of spur your anger, you know, even more.
Teenage angst to the extreme.
Exactly, you know. So I'm going, and all of a sudden this guy comes in, and I'm just like, oh man, today of all days, you really want to pull this one? So I go, okay, fine, you know. So I'm like, okay, I accept the challenge. So we start. And we're going, and the thing is, it was stupid of me too, because the 5 South, I don't know why my brain was not working properly. 5 South doesn't mean it's gonna be straight, right? There's obviously curves and freeways. So I'm just thinking 5 South, all the way, it's just gonna be a straight drive-through. So I disable traction control. Right, and this is what you do when you race. I'm not going to give, like, racing advice or something.
Please
like
don't.
That.
I don't want that.
I don't want to set a bad example for other people. Let me tell you this: in retrospect, never ever disable traction control. It's there for a reason, and so are all the other, you know, things that are there. So this is a good.
The other things that he disables.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think it was actually raining a little bit that day too. So the streets were a little bit wet.
Yeah, that's definitely not smart.
Definitely not smart, right? So basically, I'm like, okay, this guy, I don't even care. This guy, I'm gonna take this guy out no matter what. Now, if you know cars, right? A 300ZX twin turbo is a sports car. Mm-hmm. It's got a sports suspension. It's designed to be sporty. Right?
Yeah.
An IS300 Lexus is a luxury car.
It's not a sporty car.
It's not a sports car.
A strong engine, but
it has a strong engine, but it doesn't have a sports suspension.
Yeah.
It has a very luxury suspension. It's designed to be like that. So what happens? It starts to wobble when you get over a certain speed, and I won't mention what that speed is, right? So the thing is, you shouldn't be going that fast in the first place. So this day, I'm just like, this work, I'm going 100%, right?
Oh, okay.
This guy is, this guy's going to go down, basically. And there's a bunch of traffic. So there's still traffic during that time. So we're cutting between cars, and we're just racing and everything. And all of a sudden, keeps on going for a while. And then it gets to a point where there's going to be this giant turn coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, no, this guy's not going to beat me at this turn. So I try and take him at this turn. And when I go, I end up shifting like 2 lanes. And my car basically ends up doing a U-turn on the freeway at a very, very fast speed, which I don't mention for like legal reasons. Right.
So you lose traction in the back wheels and you spin out.
Exactly. Okay. And it's rear-wheel drive, right? So you spin out. Exactly. Yeah. So I spin out, I hit the center divider, and I hit like 3 other cars.
Oh my God.
Okay. So that incident that happened kind of got me to a point where I started thinking about, what's going to happen. So what really bothered me was not so much the accident. What bothered me was 2 things. Number one, I walked out of there and I didn't have a scratch on me. Mm-hmm. So people came and started telling me, some of those aunties, they used to come and they're like, Allah saved you, son. Allah saved you. I'm like, I don't even believe in Allah, man. What are you talking about? So I'm telling you, Allah has saved you for a reason, and there's a purpose, and this and that. I'm like, I don't really believe in that stuff, but
you just got lucky.
Exactly. But it kind of stayed in the back of my mind, mm-hmm. right? Is that going that fast, there was an aspect of, I got really, really lucky. Yeah. I got saved. So what ends up happening, I kind of pretend like I'm injured, okay? Because ambulance came, this and that, and I'm like, I realize I'm in big trouble.
So you don't want to be caught racing.
You don't want to be. I don't want to be caught racing. So
you can get charged with manslaughter in California.
That's what was happening. That's what was happening, right? Yeah. So police shows up, and I'm getting scared. So I'm like, oh yeah, my back is hurting and this and that. So I end up going to the emergency room. And I'm like, they're like, yeah, they did some x-rays and stuff like that. And I'm actually perfectly fine. Nothing is wrong with me. But I was just like, I don't know how to process this. I need to think about what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, my whole plan of running away from home is destroyed. Like, everything is destroyed. My car is destroyed. Everything is going to be messed up now. So this police officer comes, and he goes, I know how fast you were going. I have witness reports that say you were going, X amount of miles per hour, right? And I'm like, no, that's ridiculous. That's not true. And actually, it was true. But I'm like, no, that's not true. And he's like, look, I know you punk. He's like, look at a teenager, punk kid. Like, you kid, I'm going to make sure you go to jail. Like, I'm going to make sure that they press charges and you're going to jail because you should not be on the street. So that's when I get released. I go home and I'm just like, if I go to jail, life's over. Life's over, right? I was like 19 or something, 19 or 20. Yeah. So for me, this is like, everything's over. No more raves. No more intellectual music. No more intellectual music. No more. I mean, everything going through my mind. All the movies I watched. Well, what if I drop the soap? What's gonna happen to me? God. Like, you can imagine. Everything is going through my mind right now, and I'm just like, I'm done. Like, I'm finished. I don't even know what this means. Is it life in prison? Like, what does this mean? So, and he said, yeah, this is attempted manslaughter. You're going to jail. I'll make sure that you have charges pressed against you. Thank goodness he didn't clock you. Like, if he had you. Well, he wasn't there. Yeah, he wasn't there. So that's what I'm just like, when he said, yeah, I know how fast you're going. I'm like, how could you possibly know? Scaring you. The irony was, the number he put was exactly the number I was going, right? Wow. So I was just like, how in the world did this guy figure it out? So he figured out basically probably what the maximum speed was with the speed limitation on the car and figured out how fast you can go. So maybe that's how he got it, but he got pretty close. Gave away how fast you were going. I did. But hey, that's only if somebody goes and looks up how I'm gonna rewind. What model was it? Max? Yeah, check the model now. Okay. See the digital speed. At least I didn't remove Shaykh was fast. I was about to remove the digital speed limit as well. You can do that? You can do that. You can hack it, computer science. But you don't want to do that. That's very, very dangerous. That's even more dangerous. Blow the engine. Yeah, that too. So anyway, so then I'm sitting there in my room and I'm just like, what am I going to do? That's what started changing me. So I'm like, nobody can get me out of this situation. My dad, no matter how much money he spends, he can't help me. My mom can't help me. None of my friends. There's nobody there for me. So that's when I just decided, you know what, I'm done. The only option I have left, pray to God, is to pray to God. That's it. So I made a dua and I'm just like, you know what, okay, God, I don't even know if you exist, but if you do, like, help me. And I basically said, I said, if you get me out of this situation, then I promise I will, and I remember this very clearly. I was very cautious, very skeptical. I'm like, I promise you that I will at least put in a real effort to search for whether you exist or not.
Wow.
Like that was my.
That is the most minimum.
That was like my conditional dua. I'm like, and I really promise that if you help me with this, I will really put in effort to figure out if this is true or not true. If you're real or not real, right? So that was my dua.
It wasn't real.
No, but the irony was that's what changed my life, right?
Wow.
Because when I found out that there's no charges against me, nothing happened at all.
They just insurance.
It just insurance. I didn't even know. I mean, I was a spoiled kid, right? So my parents are paying the insurance. I don't even know what that looks like.
Yeah.
I got a point or 2 points or something like that. I had to go to traffic school or something like that.
No one pressed charges.
No one pressed charges. Nothing. Everything else was fine, right? So after I realized that that's what happened, I was just like, I didn't say Alhamdulillah, but I was just like, this is excellent. You know, this is the best thing that could ever happen. And now I have this internal struggle about, you know what?
I made a promise.
I made a promise. Was this promise just like a state of weakness that, you know, people who are religious, they just make when they get emotional and stuff? Just like the Quran says about when you're on the boat and, you know, people, even the idol worshippers, they call out to Allah. So, like, I think I might have encountered that story at some point, or the same mentality comes in. It's like, you know what? Did I just make that promise in a state of weakness? Emotional weakness because I didn't know what else to do, or did I actually make that as a real promise? So this internal debate comes into me. I'm thinking like, you know what, is it a real promise or is it not a real promise? And then I start analyzing. I'm like, you know what kind of person am I? If either I'm an extremely weak person that I just give into the emotion. I hope I consider myself to be intellectually strong person. I hope to be, right? Versus, you know, if I'm making promises, I'm just going to keep breaking them. What kind of integrity is that? So that's an internal debate. And I'm like, you know what? No. I analyzed it. No, that was a real sincere reaction that I had. And I meant what I said, and I should stick with what I'm saying. So that was my decision. That changed my life. I said, I'm going to stick with what I'm saying, and I'm going to start searching. Now, I don't know where to search. I don't know where to go. I don't know who to ask. I don't know anything. Mm-hmm. So all I do was I go to the UCI library, and I say, you know what? I'm going to... And I wasn't looking into Islam at this time. I was only looking into God. So God specifically, just whether there's a creator or not. So I go into the philosophy section again, the same section that got me away from Islam in the first place, and I start going and reading books on God. You know,
like kalam, cosmological argument, or not even there.
No,
like Christian arguments, kind of things.
Christian arguments, just any books I could find on God. So most of them come up are Christian arguments, and I start going and reading the atheist arguments. So what I start doing is I start reading the atheist arguments, saying, "Hey, can I see the weakness in any of these arguments or not?" Mm-hmm. And then I start reading the response to them eventually, and I start comparing the two, right? And that is the road that kind of brought me on the direction back towards Islam.
So it was reading those arguments actually, and you were like, "Oh, this is actually they have a say. They have a weighty argument."
Exactly. It's reading the arguments that kind of first brought me back, and that was the first step. And then I started reading other ones. So some arguments didn't make sense. And again, I'm like 19 or 20, so philosophy was. I'm not a philosophy major.
And I think at that time, a lot of the so-called Big Four, I don't think were the Big Four back, like
these neo-atheists and stuff.
Hawkins and Dawkins or whatever. Dawkins and
Stephen Hawking, Dawkins.
What's his name? He's the biggest one out of them now. The most famous one. There's only one around that's left.
Krauss and other ones. I don't know.
No, Krauss is
Ben Maher.
No, the other.
You know what I'm talking
about.
The
guy who comes on
Neil
Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan loves him.
He had a debate with
Neil deGrasse?
With
or is it another one?
Peterson.
Daniel Peterson.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
He's at the point now where he believes that we don't have free will.
Yeah, exactly.
I forget his name because he's useless.
Hitchens, he died.
No, Christopher Hitchens died. He was another one. He was one of the big four. And this is the last guy. He's like very arrogant. He's arrogant, but he's soft-spoken.
Hold on, I'm just gonna look it up.
All right, Shaykh, while he's looking that up, I want to go back because it's a story, but there's a lesson behind it. And
Sam Harris.
Sam Harris.
Oh,
thank
God.
you. Yes.
How could I forget this? May Allah guide him. All right. I want to go back to a point that you made, and I think this is important for people who are dealing with skepticism. They're dealing with this loss of identity and faith. And you had a part in your story, which I think is a very common theme I see in a lot of these kind of I left Islam, came back to Islam story, is at some point, some person didn't believe in God, sits there and makes a dua. They make a prayer to God and they say, God, if you exist, X, Y, Z. And what's amazing, I think your story, what's funny is how much setup there was, divine setup we can call it or whatever it is, for a sincere prayer. And I've told some students and I've told some kids, like, look, if you're, because you don't know the state of the people in your crowd, right? You think, okay, you're at a Muslim event, you must be Muslim. I'm gonna assume you're doing fine, but hypothetically, you're not doing well. Your faith is kind of shaky. Or you think, is this real? Is this real? I'm living in the U.S. Things are falling apart around me. I've told some students that, look, if you're doubting anything, wake up at 3 a.m. No one's gonna know you woke up at 3 a.m. Go throw some cold water on your face. Don't make you know what dua is. Just throw some cold water on your face because I want this to be as sincere as possible. Go put your head on the ground and say, God, if you exist, X, Y, Z. Help me, guide me. If not, don't guide me. Because let's say He doesn't guide you. I mean, this is a sincere dua. No one's ever gonna know you made this prayer.
Right.
You woke up in the middle of the night. There's like so many factors that this is as sincere as you're ever gonna get in your life.
Yep.
If He doesn't answer you hypothetically, you can have a case against Him on the day of judgment. Allah, I made dua, you didn't answer me I wanted guidance. Right. No one's gonna have a case against Allah on the day of judgment, right? So that's the point.
Right.
And if you ask it sincerely, He will guide you.
Yep.
Right. So I think that's something to pull out of this story. It's not just for entertainment value, but you made a dua, and these duas they're not for free. You don't just say things, right, and say like, oh, does He exist, not exist? Like when you ask something sincerely, it's going to be answered.
Exactly.
If it's best for you, especially for guidance, and that's answered.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. That's a good point.
You got Sam Harris. Yeah, you figured it out already.
Oh yeah, Sam Harris. Yeah, we got Sam Harris. Where were we before that?
So that led me to
he's looking at the
God,
two arguments.
Oh, the God philosophy.
Yes.
Yeah. And those the current day arguments are very. I would say they're not as sophisticated as the older.
Yeah, they're not. You know, they have a lot more like data, quote unquote, like scientific data and stuff that they're using. They use a lot more rhetoric because again, these
sophistry.
They use sophistry exactly. Yeah. It's more for public consumption than it is as an actual intellectual argument.
A lot of these people who follow these guys are now feeling empty, and that's why Sam Harris has to put out books on like the importance of meditation, and reflection, and you're just like, this is religion. This is a new religion,
full circle.
Right? Yeah, and that's why when Jordan Peterson comes around, they all flock to him. Like, what? He's so smart. He's religious. Yada yada yada. So that's. But you had to kind of find that on your own, which is very. I mean, so after that, you kind of go towards Islam, right? You kind of your inclination is now okay.
It gets there. Yeah, it's still a long process, but it gets there.
That's the starting point, right? So where does that put you next? Do you start praying? Do you start trying to hang out with the MSA, or is it still like an offshoot?
Oh, immediately after?
Yeah, I'm saying like what comes next.
What comes next basically is once I get to the point of believing there's a good case for the existence of God, I start searching into other religions, particularly religions.
Oh, so you're not even on the Islam path.
No, I'm not on the Islam path.
You're just God exists.
God exists. That's it.
Perennialist, brother.
Almost there. Yeah.
Divine wisdom, eternal wisdom.
Yeah. So I'm looking into all the other religions as well, and again,
like every religion, or just like
every religion that I can come across. I remember when I was in high school, I went for a debate competition in England, and for some reason we went to a bookshop, and I just had this fascination with religion during that period of time. So I bought a dictionary of religions, and I still had that book with me. So I opened that book and I start going through basically every single religion in existence about kind of what do they basically teach or what do they believe. Now it was not a very deep analysis, but it's looking at all these animist religions and stuff like that in different parts of the world. It says kind of what population are the people, how many are there, and kind of what are some of their basic beliefs. So I'm just going through the list and I'm just like, they believe in like shamans and stuff like that. I'm like, I crossed that one off. They crossed that one off. So the vast majority, there's like, I don't know, there's like 5,000 religions or something in there. I'm just going through it and I'm like, if something's really, really small, I'm like, probably you can just cross that one off. Just going through and kind of understanding all of these. And most of them, like, this is why I became atheist in the first place. Like, all of these things, something is wrong with a lot of these religions, I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people become very skeptical is they're like, oh, well, there's so many bad religions out there. I'm like, yeah, that doesn't mean that there isn't one right one though.
There's also a lot of bad science, but
there's a lot of bad. I mean,
still believe to live in science.
There's a lot of bad cars out there. But still, you know, there's a good car out there as well. Like there's bad everything out there. You know, so that's I start doing that. And then I go back to the library, and my library is pretty much my only reference because I don't have anyone to talk to that I kind of respect.
Intellectually,
that you know, I don't have a family member I can go and talk to and be like, oh, you know. I remember one time one of my uncles, he came. He's not very practicing, but he kind of started debating me. He's like, you know, why? Back when I was still Muslim, like in high school, and he's like, you reject hadith. My dad called him over. He's like, you know, this guy doesn't even believe in hadith. He's like, oh, I'm going to convince him. Don't worry. So this guy's trying to convince me to, like, you know, believe in hadith. And I'm just seeing, like, the arguments are not very strong. And I'm just like, you know, I'm debating back and forth with him. So I don't really have anyone I can go to, like, to talk to. Going to, like, khutbahs growing up, the khutbahs that I went to, like, you know,
they're weak sauce. Yeah,
they're extremely boring. Okay, like they didn't appeal to me. Okay, with all due respect to the khatib, they weren't relevant to me. And you know, in all honesty, we used to probably go 5-10 minutes before the salah begins anyway. So we're not even getting most of the khutbah. If you ask me what khutbah do I remember for the first, you know, 19 years of my life, the only one statement I remember during one khutbah was something that made me laugh. It's basically me and my brother was sitting there. We're outside, and the khatib goes, you know what? And it's a sunnah to take a shower at least once a week. You know, at least on Friday you should take a shower. We're just looking at each other like, oh man, this is gross. Like, you know, what the heck? Is that why some of these people smell bad? You know, that's the only thing I remember from any khutbah, like before the age of 19. Like I can't remember a single thing besides that, right? So that's kind of my background. So
I think he meant to say ghusl, right?
He meant ghusl basically. Yeah. So he's like at least once a week, and we're just like, whoa,
these people don't shower.
Like, what's going on here? You know? So that's my recollection. So who am I going to go to? I'm not going to go to that imam. I'm not going to go to my local imam. I'm not going to go to anyone, right? So I don't have any connection with any person I feel comfortable asking religious questions to. So eventually, you know, I tell my dad, you know, he didn't know anything that was happening, but I tell him, like, you know, I'm kind of interested. I might join you for, you know, a Friday prayer or something like that. So I'm just reading by myself in the library, but then I'm like, you know, maybe I should go and attend this Friday prayer thing again. I should start this up again. So I start attending Friday prayer, and one of the people who was giving the khutbah, he was kind of like a guy. He's the son of an imam. Those of you who know Maulana Metar, he's a Cyprus Masjid old time imam. His son was basically Cal State Fullerton doing his master's degree business management, and he used to read up on philosophy too. So one day I'm just like sitting in the khutbah and I'm listening to him, and he mentioned something about like something intellectual.
Ooh.
And I was just like, ooh, this guy's kind of smart. Like this is not normal. Like it's like a Muslim guy, and he's giving the khutbah, and he's kind of like intellectual. He mentioned something, so I'm like, this is interesting. So I told my dad, I'm like, you know, I want to, you know, like just talk to this guy for a few minutes afterwards. So I used to go and just ask him very superficial questions, just to test him, to see if I wouldn't ask him the deep question. I was asking him something a little bit more superficial, and just kind of like, I'm like, I just want to stand next to you while you're talking to other people just to see what you're saying. So people would ask him questions, you know, how long should your beard be? And, you know, he would answer fiqh questions and this and that. And one day, I'm just sitting there listening to him, and he mentioned something about, someone asked him something about philosophy or something about philosophy.
Okay.
And then he goes, you know, oh, Imam Ghazali, he refuted the philosophers. I'm just like, whoa, philosophers? Refute? That sounds interesting. Like, who's this Ghazali guy? Like, you know? And he's like, yeah, Imam Ghazali, he wrote this book against the philosophers, you know, responding to their arguments. I'm like, what kind of argument? Arguments about like God and stuff like that too? He goes, yeah, he responded to all that too. I'm like, whoa, there's like a
Muslim guy.
There's like a Muslim imam guy from like hundreds of years ago who like wrote this stuff, and he's like, yeah, there's a book there, but you shouldn't read it. I'm like, why not? He's like, no, it's a very advanced book. It's not a book you should read. So for me, I'm just like, I'm kind of that person. Someone's like, you know what? No, you can't do it. I'm like, oh, really? Oh, I'm going to do it then. I'm going to do the exact opposite. So he's like, no, it's way beyond your level. You shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden I go online Amazon was just like picking up at that time.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you know what? Okay, I got the name Ghazali. I'm gonna look this guy up. So I go and buy this guy's books. I buy all the books that I can find from him, and then Amazon had the recommendations. So the moment you buy this, it gives you recommendation on the same topic. So I'm like, that looks really interesting. So there's another books. I bought Ihya Ulumuddin, Revival of the Religious Sciences. Then I see this other recommendation. It's Reconstruction of Religious Thought in Islam by Muhammad Iqbal. It's like a philosophy book as well. So I look at that, I'm like, that's interesting.
That's a modern.
It's modern.
ITS, right? Islamic something.
I don't know if ITS published it, but it's this one was published in Pakistan or something.
Oh, okay. Because that name sounds very familiar.
Muhammad Iqbal, he's the intellectual founder of Pakistan. He's a very important.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm gonna edit that out. I feel very ignorant now.
It's okay. Not everyone.
Sorry, I didn't know.
Yeah, no, it's okay. He's a poet. He's a poet philosopher, basically. So this is a guy who's very educated.
Okay.
His field is philosophy too. I mean, he's considered to be a very very advanced in that field. So anyway, I buy his book, and I get it. And I just open the beginning, and he's talking about like Immanuel Kant, and he's talking about like, you know, Kant's refuted Aristotle, and I'm just like, whoa, this is some interesting stuff.
This is right up your alley at this point.
Exactly. So I'm just like, this is. So that what it did was it introduced me to this idea that hey, there's actually some smart Muslims that exist. Because my experience and my understanding was, Muslims are just a bunch of anti-intellectual people, and that automatically reflects on their religion. Islam is like anti-intellectual. Something's going on here. And now when I get exposed to like thinkers like Ghazali, thinkers like Muhammad Iqbal, then I'm just like, and then he also recommended this other Imam. He recommended Shaykh Abul Hasan al-Nadwi, some of his books.
Mm-hmm.
So I started reading this. I'm like, oh, this guy actually seems like pretty intelligent. He seems to know what he's talking about. And the reality is, I'd never read any books on Islam like prior to this, so I can't even. I'm not even supposed to make this judgment. I had not actually read any books at all. Honestly, before.
It's just your preconceived notion of what they would be if you had read them.
Exactly. I had never actually read an entire book, I think, in my entire life.
SubhanAllah.
Before college. So like my entire, even the books we're supposed to read in high school, I just read the Cliff Notes. You know? I didn't even read the whole Cliff Note because that would take a lot of effort too. So but I still got A's in classes, right? So that's the problem with our school system. But I had not read any of these books. I was not a reader, right? I read comic books, but I don't read actual books.
Catcher in the Rye.
Didn't read that. I read the Cliff Notes on it, right?
What was the other
Prayer for Owen Meany. I've read, Little Women.
Lord of the Flies.
Lord of the Flies.
Pride and Prejudice.
Pride and Prejudice.
So, Sheikh, this is a good... and I want to summarize another point that I think a lot of people miss, especially young people, because they're not exposed to it, just like you. They don't think Islam has had very deep thinkers that thought of all the questions you've ever had, all the questions someone might have. Yeah. It blows people's minds sometimes that someone 1,000 years ago actually already thought about this and answered it. Not just answered it, such a good answer. Like the question's done and dead if you just knew where to look.
Yep.
So I think that's something people who are dealing with these doubts and skepticism, just because you haven't seen an answer to it doesn't mean someone in Islamic history didn't already answer it. I mean, it's 1,400 years later. Do you really think you have a philosophical question that was not addressed?
Right. Well, see, the root cause of the problem is we are taught in our society that we're the most advanced people, right? In terms of technology, we are, but we're the most advanced people. We're the most intelligent people.
Modernity.
And we look back at everything else, the medieval ages, the dark ages. These people don't understand anything about the world. They're just a bunch of people who believe the earth is flat. They don't know, they don't know what electricity is. Therefore, they don't know anything about the world. So if that's the assumption, why would I grow up thinking that they would have answered something for me that's relevant for the first 1,300 years, in Islam?
And that's what's amazing is modernity is the opposite of Islamic thought in that regard.
Exactly.
Modernity says today's the best. Islam says Prophet generation was the best generation. No one after that, no one after that.
Exactly.
And it only gets worse the further away from prophethood you get.
And I think that has to do with what you learned in public school. What they teach there. It's because you kind of like when you learn about world history, you learn about Mesopotamia. That's where civilization started. Then you get into like Greece, Rome, and then after that, that's like the height of thought at the time. Then you just have
go to the next white nation.
Yeah, you have death, the medieval period, the plague, whatever. But during this time, Europe is essentially dark. You have the whole the Muslim region that's lit up, right? There's intellectual stuff going on. It's great, but none of that stuff is covered.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
And
When you
then-
say medieval scholar in Islam, that's probably a big shot when you say
That's-
medieval,
Exactly.
because that's a time
medieval.
period,
Yeah,
not
exactly.
as you know, Shaykh Mustafa got in trouble, I guess, for using the word medieval for a scholar, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Because they understand that it's a time period,
Right.
But yeah,
But it has a
for us,
negative connotation.
Negative connotation today,
Negative
but for us,
connotation.
it's like, yeah, he was an amazing guy.
Yeah.
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 And it wasn't until the Enlightenment then everything turned around. And
Exactly.
it's thought and
Right.
science, and
Like-
that's. I think that has to.
And I think our school system has changed a little bit. So they incorporate like a week or two of like, hey, there is stuff going on in the rest of the world, you know. But again, that doesn't balance the
the
narrative.
Silk Road, papyrus, gunpowder. Someone made paper somewhere.
Exactly.
We'll throw in the Chinese. Make it a word. I mean, your philosophy class. I mean, this is when you name all the philosophers you can name. How many of them are not white?
Exactly.
I mean, you can tell me there's no other philosophers. Where are all the Indian philosophers, the Chinese philosophers, the Muslims philosophers?
They're missing. Until today, they're still missing. 'Cause
African philosophers.
They're not relevant because they weren't seen in that Western philosophy tradition. So some
Yeah.
of them, what they'll do is they'll define this is the Western or European philosophical tradition.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
now Judeo-Christian.
Or
that's
That's
the,
another term that they use. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like the more conservative right
But
term now.
the problem is that every time science is being presented, any subject is being presented, it's being presented as if we are people who are connected now with the rest of the world. Therefore, when we present something, it is an objective, universal view of the entire world. But it's not. It's not, and it's not defined that way, and that's a huge problem. Huge problem.
Got it.
Definitely.
So you eventually make your way back to Islam.
Eventually, get back to Islam.
You find you probably make it, get your list down a few religions, and then you end back at square one, right? That's
yes. Yeah. Exactly.
okay.
Exactly. But a different appreciation and understanding of Islam. Right?
Because you get to it yourself now.
I get to it myself, and also, to do this, by the way, people are like, well, how do you do this in your spare time? I dropped out of school, actually. So, yeah,
so
I dropped out of school.
you stopped the comp sci thing.
I stopped the comp sci. What happens in UCI? I'm done with school. I don't need a university education. I need to figure this out for my life first. But what happened when I went to the office, I was like, I'm dropping out. The lady's like, well, here's my suggestion. You can just put your admission on hold for up to 1 year. And if you change your mind 11 and a half months later, you can automatically enroll without having to re-register. So I'm like, yeah, all right, that's fine. What I know I'm not coming back, but
Just in case.
This in case, go ahead and do that, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Make my parents happy. They're like, oh, good. He's got 12 months to do whatever the heck he wants, So I do that. So in that period, I'm sitting there reading, studying, reading, these books, start talking to a few people that I can talk to. Pretty much only this one guy who, I kind of have some confidence in. And it brings me eventually kind of back towards Islam to the point where I'm like, yeah, I want to be Muslim now. I identify as Muslim. Didn't have the terminology back then, right? I'm getting into the, but yeah, I'm Muslim now, but I still have a ton of questions, and I want those questions resolved, and I want answers to them. So I need to study Islam more in depth. So that's kind of where I was, So I tell my parents, I'm like, look, I need to go study Islam, and because the books that I got was by Shaykh Abul Hasan al-Nadwi. I'm like, well, I've looked around, and the only place I can really learn Islam is in India at the school Nadwa. Like, this is where I need to go. My parents are like, yeah, right. you're gonna go to India. There's over our dead bodies that we're gonna let you go to India. It's not gonna happen. So they sent me to like these local Islamic schools over here, and just horrible experience. If you want me to get into it, I can get into it. But.
Yeah, say some stuff.
So
I mean, at the time, there's no IOK.
No,
there's no CIU.
So I don't even know about IOK, right?
I think IOK was happening in like someone's house.
Yeah, it was.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
So what was happening is basically, again, I'm at a point where I'm still not associating with any Muslims. Okay?
Oh.
I still don't have any Muslim friends.
Your network is very.
There's no network. I'm not part of MSA. I'm not part of anything. So I'm just kind of doing this on the side. And then when I kind of become Muslim, I'm still going to the library, even though I'm not enrolled in UCI. I'm going to UCI every single day, and I'm sitting in the library and I'm reading. So I'm like, well, now that I'm Muslim, I want to start praying. Okay, well, technically, I'm supposed to be praying in a group. Okay, I found these Muslims who are praying on campus. So the way I joined MSA, quote unquote, was just by praying with them. So I take a break, I go and pray with them, and then I leave. And they're like, you should stay. I'm like, no, I got a lot of reading to do, and I would leave. So that was like my experience at the time. And then I tell my parents, I'm like, look, I need to go to this Islamic school. I need to go and like continue learning this thing. It's really important for me. And they're like, no, you're not going to travel to like a random country like India. Like we fled that country to come to America for the American dream, and you're going back to the place where we ran away from. Like, this makes no sense at all. This is never going to happen. This is the dumbest idea we've ever heard. Like, from their perspective, like, this makes no sense. People are dying to come to America, and you're like trying to die to go back to where we fled from in the first place. It doesn't make sense. So they said, no, you're not doing that, but we talked to some random people for you, and we found out that there's an Islamic school in San Diego. So you go in that school in San Diego, and you're going to get the exact same thing. So I'm thinking, okay, well, what is it? It's a madrasa, right? So I'm like, I don't even know what a madrasa is, but the only thing that I've read was I'm reading the books of Imam Ghazali. I'm like, well, Imam Ghazali was teaching at Madrasa Nizamiya, right? So I'm like, oh, well, it's one of those madrasas. So I'm gonna have like a bunch of Imam Ghazali as my teacher. So this is gonna be awesome. I'm gonna like discuss like these deep philosophical, aqidah, theological discussions with them. This is gonna be great. I'm ready. Sign me up. So my parents are like, okay, great. You know, we're very happy. You know, we know about the madrasa system. I'm like, yeah, I had no idea that you even knew about this. You know, like you've been
holding this back from me.
Exactly, you've been holding this back. Like, I'd never even heard of like madrasa nizamiya. This is gonna be like one of those things I didn't even know. They're like, yo, we know about madrasas, of course. We know about madrasas, you know. So I'm just like, oh man,
this is great.
So they're like, you're sure? I'm like, yeah, I'm sure. I go to San Diego, pack up my bags, everything, go in there, live inside the masjid in San Diego. Okay, so
with the tabligis,
masjid. So I go there, and the first thing I go in, I meet the principal of the school, and he's like tablighi guy, you know, full beard and stuff, and I'm like, this guy like must be one of the Imam Ghazali type guys. You know, this is pretty cool. I can ask him questions and stuff. So he's just telling me what school's gonna be like. So he hears what's going on, and my dad tells me, you know, he dropped out of UCI and this and that. She's like, no, you know, son, this is very bad. You should go back into UCI and you should finish your computer science degree. She's like, what? Like, wait a minute. Like, dude, I just came from atheism, right? I'm coming to an Islamic school to like learn about Islam, and you're telling me I should go back to school, like to do my career. Like something's not clicking. So like something is just not feeling right. I'm not understanding what's going on. And then he's like, okay, I tell you what, if you're gonna come and enroll in our school, at least part-time go to like community college and do a profession, because it's really important to be balanced. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like I don't understand what this whole being balanced means, because I'm coming from a very like secular perspective here. Yeah. So I'm coming in, and they're like, okay, well, but the guy thinks, okay, fine, you're
someone has to pay for the operation. That's what he's telling you.
Exactly. So he comes in, and you know, I come in, I'm like, you know, I wanna do the Islamic program. I don't even know what that is, right? Do the Islamic program. They're like, oh, good, we're just launching a new cohort. It's gonna be perfect. We have this other teacher who just came from Pakistan. He's so interesting. He's like a Thailand guy. He's a convert to Islam. He studied in Pakistan. He speaks Urdu, speaks Arabic. And I'm like, I don't want to care about the Urdu, but yeah, okay, the Arabic, that's good. He knows Arabic. That's important. So he goes, okay, you're gonna really enjoy him. I'm like, okay, this is good. So we're living on campus. First of all, classes start 1 week late. So I'm like, you know, wait a minute, punctuality, Islam. I was reading about like some punctuality stuff, and okay, that's not happening. So I'm kind of getting disappointed. Then these students, these are like forget high school dropout. These are like middle school dropout kids who are put in the madrasa. Okay, they're memorizing Quran. They have like very little education. They're not there for studying Islam. They're not serious at all. And then I find out, you know, I go into the bathroom. Okay, the bathroom again. I'm coming from like upper middle class, you know, standards. So I go into the bathroom of the masjid. It's the hole in the wall toilet, and above it is the shower.
And everything is wet, right?
Everything is wet, dirty, just disgusting, you know? And I'm just like, okay, I'm going to have to shower on top of the toilet, right? So I'm going to do both. So I'm like, I was just like, okay, this is very difficult. It's dirty. Something's not feeling right. I'm like, you know what? It's okay, man. If I can get the answers to my questions, this is worth it, you know? So I put up with all that. Class begins. Class was just, it was miserable. It was Arabic grammar, right? This is why people are like, you know, why don't you teach Arabic grammar in the beginning? I'm like, understand where I'm coming from. I'm trying to learn Islam. I'm not trying to learn Arabic grammar.
You don't want to drop out early.
Exactly. You drop out early is what's going to happen. So I'm studying Arabic grammar, right? And I am translating for the guy because the guy doesn't speak English, so I'm like translating.
He only speaks 2 languages, so
he speaks Arabic and Urdu.
That's it.
And
That's
then
it.
Thailand or whatever, Cambodian or something, whatever it was. So he's like, well, since you seem to be kind of the smart, like most intelligent kids in the class, you're gonna somehow translate what I'm saying to the rest of the kids so that they can understand what's going on. It was like this translation thing. We're trying to learn Arabic grammar, and then we're going and learning a book called Beshti Zawar, which is like a fiqh book on Islamic law, basic Hanafi fiqh book. For me, I'm like, I didn't even know I'm going into like a Islamic law program. Okay, I'm going in there to learn Islam, whatever that means. So I'm exposed to, okay, well, you know, if you have a mouse and the mouse falls into your jar of clarified butter, how much of the butter do you have to scoop out before that butter is considered pure? And I'm just looking at this like, what the hell is this? Like, what is this? And then if a donkey falls into a well, right? How much of the water do you have to scoop out before your wudu will be valid? And we're sitting there the whole month, we're sitting there, and I'm just like,
these are the masail.
This ain't Imam Ghazali, man. Like, is this? And you know, I don't know. Yeah, Imam Ghazali wrote about this stuff too. He's got fiqh books addressing all these issues. But again, I don't have a conceptual, holistic view of this thing, and I'm not coming in there for this reason. Then when I find out the majority of the students in class, the majority of my classmates, during break time, they're always leaving and they're going in the back, and I don't know what they're doing. I find out that they're smoking weed in the back.
Oh, this is great.
So I'm just like, okay, man. So
been there, done that.
Yeah, I'm just like, what is? First of all, none of these guys want to be here. Okay?
Yeah.
None of them are very educated. They're definitely not intellectual. And then they're out in the back smoking weed. Like, is this what I like left everything behind for? So I'm very, very disappointed. So I'm like, I want to get out of here. So my parents find out. They're like, oh, well, you know, we have some inside information. One of the teachers who used to be in San Diego, he knew there were problems in San Diego. So he actually started his own school in Cerritos. So you can transfer into his school and you are not going to have any of these problems. So I'm like, okay, great. So let's do that. So I transfer over to his school. It turns out to be ex-military. You know, he's very, like, just a very rough style. He's a nice guy and all that, you know, deep down. But so I go into his school and we start studying the same thing. It's Arabic grammar primarily, and it's Islamic law.
That's the madrasa system.
That's the madrasa system. But again,
but you just think madrasa
nizamiya. You know, this is middle age, height, golden period of Islam, where people are getting this comprehensive, awesome education and all that. So I'm going in there and I'm studying this stuff. And the same problem happens, right? Living, you know, in the facilities. I was driving back and forth, but people are living on campus in the masjid, basically. None of these students want to be there, right? Yeah. Some, you know, I still know some of my classmates. None of them want to be there. They're not serious. They're not doing their homework. And what I'm studying is not what I originally came for, right? Yeah. So he was very hardcore. Like, you know, if you make one mistake in Arabic grammar, you will do 20 push-ups. And then you'll stay in push-up position until he calls on everyone else. And then it's your turn again. And if you make a mistake in one conjugation of a verb, you do another 20 push-ups. If you get it right, you can get out of push-up positions. You'll stay in plank, basically, until you go around. So the cool thing about the class was...
You got really fit?
Either you're going to learn Arabic really well, or you're going to be really fit, you know? So you win either way, you know? So for me, I was the guy who was doing this homework and this and that. And the thing is, they were not progressing. They were not moving forward with the classes. Yeah. So I'm just like... And just the whole mentality of the thing, I'm like, what is going on? And then I began to understand why everyone who's looking at me and I'm telling them I want to go learn Islam, they're like, you know, son, you're such a smart kid. Why would you want to go learn Islam? Like, why would you want to go to like an Islamic school? Like, you're smart. That's for like dumb people. Like, why would you do that? And I began to understand the mentality only later, because what's happening is two things are simultaneously happening. I'm in this curriculum doing this stuff, and I'm like, this is not what I really want to do. But I'm continuing to read all the books on the side. So while I'm reading all these books on the side, I'm reading Abul Hasan al-Nadwi, I'm reading about Western civilization, Islam and Muslims, how the Muslim world in the 20th century has the effects of colonization, the effects of decolonization. I'm beginning to understand that I'm piecing together this narrative of something has gone wrong, right?
And this is the manifestation of it in front of you now.
Exactly. So now I'm beginning to understand. This is exactly what has happened. This is the thing that has gone wrong.
Yeah.
So I still have in my mind this mentality that, you know, there's got to be some golden age, you know, Islamic school out there that I can find, and it's going to be like the place for me.
Inshallah.
So that's what I do. I leave that school, and then I joined the pre-IOK before it was IOK. So IOK was there. So I meet Shaykh Nu'man. Farhan was my classmate. Sheikh Farhan was my classmate in UC Irvine. So I go and I join IOK, and I'm like, okay, well, this is much nicer in the sense that, you know, Sheikh Nu'man he's an intellectual guy. He's a business professional. You know, he was tech as well. He's nice. He has good character, good akhlaq. So for me, like on the akhlaq part, I'm like, this is perfect. This is a lot better than what I was experiencing. So what they're trying to do is they were trying to like revise the madrasa system and make it like nice, make it like more compatible with like our cultural values. But when it comes to the curriculum, at that time, at least, it was almost the same thing. It was taught in a nicer manner, but again, the focus is either on law and the focus is on you know, Arabic grammar and stuff like that. So I'm like, you know, okay, I can put up with this for a while, as long as I'm progressing. What ended up happening is that, again, it was in its infancy stages. The other students who were there, they were a lot more serious than the previous ones, but they weren't serious enough to be doing their homework completely. So for me, I'm like, look, this is my entire life mission. Like, I left my school, I left everything behind. This is my 100% occupation. Nothing else matters to me except this thing. So I'm doing all my homework, I'm advancing this and that, and what keeps happening is students are not really doing their work and this and that, so they end up going and repeating. They say, oh, well, we're going to repeat the same material again.
Oh boy.
So I'm like, look, that's not fair, you know, because like I did my homework. Why do I have to go through the same class again? And then it happens like a second time and a third time, and I'm just like, no, this is too much now, you know. So I'm trying to find a private teacher who can just kind of like teach me on the side or something like that. I can't find anyone who's going to dedicate full time for me. Obviously, it doesn't make sense. Like, you know, who's going to dedicate the entire day to just keep teaching me the whole time? So that doesn't work. So I'm like, look, I need to go somewhere. I need to get out of here. There's got to be a solution for me. So I tell my parents, I'm like, look, I have to go. And they're like, you're not going at all, but what we'll do is we'll make a deal with you. Here's the deal. Because you're not finding what you want in California over here. So here's what we're going to do. You finish your degree at UCI, go re-enroll, finish your degree. The moment you finish your degree, we're going to let you go to India, where you wanted to go. So I'm like...
They thought you would give up.
They're hoping, right?
So like he's going to get the comp sci degree, get a job at Google, and forget any of this ever happened.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what their expectation was, right? So I go back in, I re-enroll before 12 months are up. I'm back in, but something is totally different about me, because now I'm Muslim. I'm still reading, but now I have this value for knowledge, right? So like I care about the idea of learning, not so much learning computer science as a career, but just learning in general. Right? I just have a different perspective, because when you read those books on Islamic thought and everything, there's this importance of knowledge in general, which helps you through life. So now I'm just not coming in there like I just got to finish a degree. I do value the knowledge, but at the same time, I want to get this degree quickly done, and I want to get to my real knowledge that I need to.
So you're like laser focused now. You're no
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So now I go take a full load of classes, and I end up making up the entire year that I missed by just taking a full load of classes. So I graduated in like 3 years.
MashaAllah.
Right. So and you know, it can be done actually less than that. So
yeah, people at UCI, the computer sci guys, they do it every year.
Yeah. So Shaykh Munib, he's you know, someone else in our community. So when he was joining UCI, I told him, I'm like, look, you know, I'm a latecomer to like valuing knowledge. You grew up in like a very intellectual family. You're an educated guy. You are, you know, you're intelligent. You're doing computer science at UCI. I guarantee you, if I did it in 3 years, I'm telling you could do it in 2 years. And he's like, that's not possible. I'm like, I'm telling you can do it.
You're taking like 30 units a quarter or a semester?
Just you handle the whole, including summer, right? Just do summer as well, yeah. So he kind of disappointed me. He did it in 2 years and 1 quarter. But he could have easily, if he just put a little bit more effort, he could have easily done it in 2 years, right? The thing is, you could do all these classes in 2 years. So I come in there, just different mentality, right? So I go in there, finish all my classes. At the same time, I'm still reading and studying. I continue with IOK before it was IOK.
You have excellent time management skills.
I don't have nothing else going on. Nothing else happening, right?
Yeah, if you don't mind me pausing the narrative, because you made a jump here. So you took a year off.
Yes.
And I wanted to ask you about that. So you obviously had a rougher time doing it, but nowadays, so when I was in Texas, there were a lot of kids at Qalam. And the Qalam Institute is in Texas with Sheikh Abdul Nasser Jangda, Hussein Kamani.
Yeah.
Very great institute. And they do like a 1-year Adamiyya program, and they have longer ones as well. But what's your perspective now that we have kind of established institutions here in the U.S.? Some student, he's in college. He's 2 years in, maybe less, maybe more. He says, I want to take a year off to go kind of study my deen, so to speak, just for a year. Do you encourage those kind of things, or you say like finish your degree first, don't fall behind, so to speak, on your progress, or should you do that, come back?
I absolutely encourage studying your deen first, because here's what's going to happen. Any program of university program, pretty much across the country, it's going to have a liberal arts curriculum. So you're going to have to study either philosophy, anthropology, sociology, psychology. You're going to have to study something that has a non-technical aspect, which is going to affect your understanding of Islam.
Your worldview.
It's going to affect your worldview completely.
Yeah.
Is it better to have a strong Islamic foundation when going in, or to go in and then go and try and fix whatever little brainwashing has taken place, right? I'm definitely a proponent of the first one.
Between high school and college? Is that probably ideal?
Ideal is between high school and college, and if it's even possible, have a good, strong high school curriculum while going through. But yeah, outside of that, right after high school, I recommend getting accepted, deferring your enrollment for a year. I mean, Mormons do it, the LDS church. Everyone has to do this.
And then they go on their mission.
They go on their missionary. They have to finance it themselves. I mean, I can talk more about that in detail, but they have to work in high school to finance themselves to go make missionary work around the world somewhere before they jump into college. And they're still getting into great colleges. They get into a good career. Like, it's very doable. It's not that it's not doable. So yeah, my advice is right after high school, take a year off and go straight into like some Islamic studies program. Solidify yourself. Now 2 things are going to be accomplished. Number 1, you get into university, you're going to be protected. Protected, you're going to not only protected, but you're going to be able to filter the information that you have and actually contribute to the discussion in a completely different way. So it's not just about protecting yourself like living in a bubble. It's about being able to contribute to the knowledge discussion that's taking place, number 1. Number 2, your experience in like a Muslim student association is going to be totally different. You can actually contribute to the MSA. So now you're a producer rather than just a consumer hoping that if my MSA is strong, they're going to make me strong. No, you can actually help make your MSA stronger. You guys know that experience, exactly. Yeah. So, Cal Poly Slow, right? So,
hands off credit.
We weren't supposed to say that.
It's better now.
It's better now, alhamdulillah. Yes. So yeah, I mean, I would recommend that. That's ideal. That should be the standard for all
I think
Muslims.
Nowadays it's even more important. Over the past half decade or so, things have gotten really out of control in the university. Yeah. So this is...
I mean, you have to... What's funny is you're saying to undo the brainwashing that happens in college. A lot of it's happening now, middle school, high school. Yeah. So by the time you get to your Islamic thing between high school and college, you're like, what?
Yep, exactly.
And then you're going to go to college. Hopefully, you've kind of laid some foundations. Yeah,
exactly.
So what if hypothetically there's no institution around you? Do you know any institutions that someone could study through online?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so that's where I started.
This is time for the plug.
This is the plug, right?
Yeah, go for it.
So that's why I started California Islamic University, right? So that's what a kind of a curriculum, a kind of more balanced curriculum that I wanted for myself. That's structured, it's professional, it's organized, and you could do it potentially online. So you're living in Alabama somewhere, and you're like, okay, you have a family like mine that's like, you're not traveling anywhere. You're going to stay right here. Well, what do? You got 2 options. Either take off 1 year, or if you're jumping into college, or even if you're senior year of high school, you simultaneously do an Islamic curriculum online while you're doing your regular school as well. And that's going to really give you a solid foundation to protect you and to make you someone who can actually learn, be a contributing, Muslim on campus. So I highly, highly recommend people do that. Ideally, if you could take off the entire year, that's great.
Yeah.
If you could take off 2 years, that's even better. I mean, again, this is not about people becoming scholars. This is the cost of living.
This is what you got to know.
It's the cost of living in Western society, right? A lot of immigrant parents are not understanding that this is not back home. You can't just leave the kid, and all of a sudden he's going to naturally just grow into the same way he would have like in Syria or Palestine or
where Adhan's playing 5 times a day.
Exactly, exactly. It doesn't matter how religious you are.
That took a village to do that. We don't have that village.
Exactly. And also, even in those places, that's changing. We, with globalization, the influence that's coming into those places, that was a generation ago.
Yeah.
Right? It's changed. Right? And, and even if that was your minimum standard, which it shouldn't be, because there's a lot of weird practices, that are going on there. Even if that was the minimum standard, you're not even going to reach that minimum standard. That's the cost here. You have to invest extra time. People need to wake up to that. Wake up to the reality. So now there's alternatives that are there. So Cal Islamic is an option for an alternative, and there's a lot more alternatives out there, which is awesome.
Alhamdulillah.
So, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Let's go back to the narrative though. We want to make it. We want to make it to your eventual like where you're sitting now. So how do you we were at the
He's contributing back to his MSA.
You're contributing back to MSA.
I re-enrolled in college.
You re-enrolled in college. Okay. You finish it real quick.
Full-time schedule. I'm reading on the side.
Yeah.
And what's happening is because I'm reading, so I'm not really part of MSA technically at this point in time.
You're too busy.
No, not so much too busy. So here's what's happening. It's like, and I fault myself for this, but I'm telling you what my mentality was at the time. Okay?
Got it.
I'm not telling you what I believe about MSA now. Okay. So what's happening is I'm reading all this stuff. And I'm coming in and I'm praying with the MSA people because we pray together as Muslims. I get that part. But then when I look at my MSA, or MSU for UCI, right? They, even though MSU at UCI, even in my day, was one of the more active MSAs in the country, from my perspective, I'm going and reading and I'm coming in here and I'm realizing it's more of a social club.
Yeah.
Right? And people are socializing, and a lot of them don't know very much about Islam. And they don't take Islamic studies as seriously as I'm taking it, right? So for me, I'm coming at a totally different, perspective. So I'm going in there, and they're like, come on, man, socialize with us. I'm like, socialize with you? Like, I gotta go read. Like, I'm here to learn about Islam. You guys want to come and like read with me? Do you want to start learning Arabic with me? Do you want to you want to read some of these books? And they're like, no, let's just hang out. We're just gonna have like a hangout thing. So for me, I was I was not into this whole hangout culture, right? And I understand now.
Some people need it.
That's what I'm saying. Some people need it. There's a very important value that it plays.
Yeah.
But during my experience at that time, I'm just like, look,
it's not for you.
I don't need this, right? Like, that's good. It would be nice and fun and all that. But first of all, keep in mind, like, with all due respect, I love my Muslim brothers and sisters, but like, I'm coming from a non-Muslim friendship culture, right?
Yeah.
So what do I have in common with most of these Muslims? Like, it's just the Islam part, right? So for me, it's hard for me to even socialize with them, because I've been socializing with like non-Muslims my whole life. The type of things that we do, we talk about and all that, I'm still in a transition phase.
Yeah.
And, it's hard for me to even socialize with them, because I'm not used to that. They're not, like, if I had 100 people to choose from, I wouldn't just choose the Muslim if I had, anyone to socialize with. So for me, the socializing part is not important for me. It's the knowledge component, the knowledge part, that's really important for me. And I felt like there was almost like a pushback against me at the time. Like, this guy's just, people kept saying, this guy's too serious. Something's, you got to be more chill. Like, why are you so serious all the time? You come in here and, and it's not that I wouldn't smile, I wouldn't talk to people, but people just had this issue that, this guy's just too serious, so he doesn't want to hang out, he doesn't want to socialize for a long period of time. So that was an issue that I had. And then things would start late, and I'm like, where's the revival? Like, I was reading about Islamic revival in like different countries.
The wrong part of it.
Exactly. So I started a project called Project Revival, basically Revival of Islam. I posted up notes like, on the MSA wall, like, we're gonna start all activities on time. Prayer will start on time. We should never make commitments unless we're gonna keep them. I got hadith references on the side and everything. I'm like, who's really dedicated? Who's gonna sign up, to do this? I was getting frustrated. Like, a lot of the leadership, they're not waking up for Fajr. I'm like, dude, we need Fajr network, wake up network. We need to get this in progress. And people are like, man, why are you being so serious, man? You're bringing like this seriousness aspect into MSU.
It's funny, your seriousness is like the base level of Islam.
It's the base level, exactly. So for me, that's kind of weird. And now all of a sudden, the way I get recruited into MSA or MSU is basically they realize, hey, this guy is not really into this whole socializing thing, but this guy seems to be like more knowledgeable than we are. Why don't you come and teach us? So I'm like, oh, okay. You want me to like teach a class, but like I don't even know anything. Like I'm a brand new Muslim. They're like, no, you know a lot more than we know. So I read a few books, right? So they're like, teach us. So I'm like, okay, I'll teach you. So I start a class. I start like an Islam 101 class. Then I start a Sirah class. Then I'm learning Arabic, so I start an Arabic class. So I started getting students. I don't even know Arabic completely. I know like I'm on chapter 10, so I start teaching from chapter 1. Right? So, and then some people come and they're like, you know, they're Arabs and they're like, man, you know.
Oh yeah, they're definitely like this Pakistani.
Look at this Pakistani guy. This dude don't even know Arabic, and he's gonna teach an Arabic class. I'm like, look, I'm doing this because no one else is teaching. Why don't you teach the Arabic class?
Like, no.
Oh no, I can't teach an Arabic class and this and that. You know, Arabs know their Arabic and blah blah blah, and we're getting into debates on
Great
grammar.
Misconception.
And, yeah, just hey, a big misconception. You know, this guy knew his Arabic, by the way. Some people they know the Arabic because they come from Arabic country. They go through Arabic medium. Their grammar is good. Everything. They have no passion to teach.
Oh, yeah.
So they're not going to teach. They're not going to do anything. So I'm teaching all these classes. That's how I kind of got sucked into MSA, I say, in a sense, right?
Yeah.
So I'm doing that, and then I start to socialize with people. There's an importance dawah-related element to it and all that. That was pretty much my experience with MSA and MSU, and then they start making me do khutbahs, you know? So now all of a sudden, I start doing khutbahs. I'm like, well, how did this happen? I'm like the latest guy. I'm like the latest addition to Islam here. Out of all of you, why would I be the one giving khutbah? And it's just basically the simple thing. It's like if anyone who can read like 3 books on Islam is basically the most knowledgeable person in the entire MSA. Like if you just take one person, like an average MSA across the entire country, okay? If you just take one person, you take him out for 1 week and you educate him, he'll come back the most knowledgeable person in the entire MSA, probably, or maybe number 2. Right? And that's just the reality of like.
No, this is a great point. Like you were talking about how you couldn't socialize
laughing, but it's true
with the Muslims versus non-Muslims. What's funny is, so when I went to college, I wasn't like a big part of the MSA. I knew like Ahmed from freshman year, right? So I knew the MSA members, but I was living with non-Muslims for the first 4 years. What's funny is the deepest conversation I had, philosophical, intellectual, whatever, those conversations I had with non-Muslims. Because those guys, they read books and I read books. So we could have like actual conversations about something that's not what you eat, where'd you go to, what is this halal, not halal? Like, you know, there's like a real substance to a conversation. I mean, it's really sad.
Yeah, it is sad.
Yeah, I didn't read, so we were talking about stupid stuff.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing. So, one, we need to encourage that. I think what you're saying is a good point. We need to encourage that, and number 2, we need to facilitate that for people who are interested in those things. So, what's happening is, even though you may meet a lot of people, you don't know who's interested in this stuff and who reads and who doesn't read. It's very hard. So what happens is you're so used to like, oh, well, what's the latest kebab shop that just opened, man? They have the best kebabs. So you get into that socializing mode and you think everyone's like that and you don't realize, hey, this guy, I could have actually talked to him about something way deeper, but we end up talking about like the kebab shop or something like that, right? So we need to change this narrative. We need to facilitate like some kind of spaces
like a book club?
Like a book club or a discussion club or something like that, where people who are a little bit more well-read are going to be attracted to come there. And, not necessarily, the incentive is to have a good discussion.
Yeah.
You don't even need to have like the best coffee or something like that. So I think we're focusing too much on the superficial aspect of like, and your coffee was great, by the way, but like we're focusing on like,
thanks to my wife. That's
alhamdulillah.
not me.
Alhamdulillah. There's the masculinity part of this. Yeah. But the thing is like, when we're talking about like, we're going to develop this Muslim coffee shop. The idea is, well, the coffee's going to be like this and the design's going to be like this and it's going to look like this. Well, where's the
coffee?
Where's the substance of it, right? Where's the intellectual discussion? What are you trying to foster here, right? Is it I wouldn't want to say superficial socialization, but just kind of like recreational socialization, or some kind of like,
it's like the 9-to-5 social. When you go to work, these guys talk about nothing. Nothing of real substance to be like, oh, we connect about something. I don't know.
Right.
I mean, I know that MSAs they do tend to be more social clubs, but coming from someone who definitely needed that, I know a lot of people who also needed that too.
That's what I'm saying.
That within itself stopped someone from going to a party, stopped someone from seeing their girlfriend that night, and that might have been enough.
I agree. That's why I say in retrospect, when I look back, I'm like, that was extremely valuable. Like everyone's not going to fall into that, but I'd say most people need the socializing as a priority, and the knowledge stuff is like second for them.
It's funny, if you want to summarize all Muslim youth problems, like really superficial summarization, they had a bad friend group. At the end of the day, they were with the wrong crowd at the wrong time of their life. If they had been with a good crowd, if I was with a crew, younger, who's praying 5 times, like, yo, we're gonna go to the masjid. You're just gonna do what the guys tell you to do. That's the peer pressure is to go to the masjid and read Quran. That's what the peer pressure is gonna tell you to do.
Yeah, exactly.
The most religious guy in our MSA was the guy who prayed 5 times a day.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, when he showed up, he's like, whoa, this guy prays 5 times a day. And I was like, and you didn't? Like, what is so... we had one guy who showed up and gave like a khatara one time. And we were like, oh, mashallah, this guy's like really knowledgeable. But then he ended up leaving and saying we weren't serious enough about Islam. Turned out he was Ahmadiyya.
Twist.
We didn't even know what that was until like, wait.
Until he told us Jesus already came back. We're like,
we were. We found out at an MSA function, like an MSA 101, interfaith, and then they're talking about different groups believing in Jesus, and then our guy was like, oh yeah, we believe Jesus is gonna come back, and then this guy raised his hand and he's like, oh well, I'm Muslim, but Jesus already came back, and we're like, the whole room just kind of goes silent. So that guy was more knowledgeable than everyone else. Subhanallah.
Alhamdulillah.
But you eventually graduate.
I eventually graduate.
And you go overseas?
I go straight to my parents and I tell them, I say, you know what? Promise is the promise, right? I kept my promise to Allah, in my capacity, and you're obviously going to keep your promise. And they're like, no. no, that's not going to happen. Like, you were, this fad of Islam was supposed to dissipate by now. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, it's been like 2 years. You should have, like, this Islam thing should have been out of your system by now. So, no, you're not going anywhere. Like, you need to go get a job. Go get a job and then go get married and settle down. And I'm like, no, I really want to go. They're like, well, get a job and then we'll talk.
Oh,
I'm just like, come on, this is not fair,
Yeah.
So I said, okay, fine. I got no money now. So I lost all the stock market, remember? So never got, since that margin call came in, the margin from my father was cut off as well. So all that, because he knew what was happening, right? So once he found out I was running away, all my accounts are completely cut, right? So I have zero money.
Yeah.
I'm completely dependent on parents now. Whatever little amount of independence or trust they had in me was completely just...
fizzled.
Yeah, pulled out from under me. So now I'm done. I have no money. Graduated. Parents paid for tuition, so I don't have loans, which is good. Most people today have like loans and stuff. Alhamdulillah. So I start applying, get a job. So I get a job, and I'm sitting there doing really good. My mentality also has changed, right? So I'm like, very punctual, very hardworking. Because I'm reading in these books that Muslim is supposed to do all these things. So they're like, man, this guy's like star employee. It's like to the point where my boss is telling me that like. You need to just slow down in terms of working. This is a problem because you're working so fast. We don't have projects anymore to give you because you keep finishing them. So the next time I tell you that a project is supposed to take a week, it better not be done in one day.
Did you work for the government or something?
No, I work for a tech.
Silicon Valley would love you today.
Yeah,
what is going on?
Exactly. So I'm working for a tech company. It's like a company called Aqueduct. And, they're telling me like, okay, we brought you in this position. You're doing great, but you need to slow down. You need to slow down because it's making us
look so serious.
Bad.
Chill.
Yeah, you're done, and it's like you need to chill out. I'm like, all right, fine. So after a few months, I'm making pretty decent money and everything. I'm living at home, so all the money is going into my account. And then as soon as I just have enough, like 3 months or something, I'm like, you know what? I have to come and tell my parents. I'm like, you know what? Do you want me to go? You want to send me to India now? They're like, no, keep working. I'm like, well, now you can't stop. Because now I just reached a threshold where I have enough money to go and pay myself. I can go on my own, and I'll figure out the rest later. They're like, oh, this is a big problem now, right? Like, this guy is actually financially independent now. He's got enough money, and he's really going to do it. So what can we do? Like, the last arrow in their quiver, or the last thing in their arsenal is, okay, I tell you what. There's this dream you've always had. You've had that Ferrari Testarossa poster on your wall when you were a kid. You remember that car? I'm like, yes, I remember that car. I said, we know you like that car, right? I said, yes, I like that car. I said, if you don't go, we're going to go to the dealership and we're going to buy you that Ferrari.
Whoa.
Don't go.
A Ferrari,
right? So, and my parents are very well off,
MashaAllah.
So, alhamdulillah. So, and because just think about their mentality. They're so afraid of what can happen to me.
Here's dunya.
Right? This is dunya, but again, in retrospect,
they're giving it to you.
In retrospect,
they're afraid of what
they're afraid.
Yeah.
In retrospect, they're afraid.
That's how, and that's sad because that's how afraid they are.
That's how scared they are, right?
You know, that's
in a way, actually, they had some legitimate concerns. Okay, like again, they're coming from Pakistan technically, even though my dad was born in India. They don't know anyone in India. Right, so if I would have chosen Pakistan, maybe they would have been a little bit more comfortable, perhaps.
Yeah.
Pre 9/11, especially, right? But this is post 9/11, anyways.
Yeah.
So they would be a little bit more comfortable. But this is India. They don't know a single person in the whole country. There's no connection to this land at all. So a foreign country, their perception of madrasas are already not good perception.
Maybe the perception of India itself is not.
Perception of India against Muslims is a problem in and of itself.
Yeah.
You got this Orange County kid. How the heck is he gonna live in India? So
he couldn't take the pooping hole in San Diego.
Exactly.
He's not gonna.
He didn't want the shower on the hole in the wall toilet. This guy's gonna live in India.
Oh God.
And then he's an American on top of that, right? So you walk around with an American passport. And he's going to be spotted immediately. Now, I don't understand these things until I get there. Like, people can see you from a mile away. I don't get that, but they know that. They're like, they will tell that you're an American from a mile away. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, I don't know why that would be. So they have a legitimate concern. In retrospect, I understand their concern. So if some kids are like, yeah, my parents are doing the same thing. I'm like, you know what? They have some legitimacy in what they're saying, So, but anyway, so I'm like adamant. I'm like, no, this is the place. This is the only school that I think is going to have the Imam Ghazali type that I'm looking for. Like, Shaykh Abul Hasan Nadwi is going to be my teacher or something like that. Based upon what I've read on their website, based upon the books that I've read from him, based upon some other books. So we go and we visited the school and this and that. My dad went with me. And he saw that people are kind of nice and things are comfortable. So I tell him, I said, I am going. So their last option was, look, here, I'm gonna buy you this dunya and don't go. You can still go to a local Islamic school here. We're not gonna stop you, but you don't go over there. And you get this car and you enjoy. And you can drive up. And they're like, once you become an imam, you're going to be the coolest imam. You're going to drive up in a Ferrari and you'll be like the Ferrari.
Imam Ferrari.
You'll be the Ferrari imam, right? Like, don't you want that? And then like some of my other friends are like, yeah, dude, that would be really cool, man. So I'm just like, I'm like, that doesn't fulfill what I'm trying to get, right? Because I'm not finding here what I'm trying to get.
Yeah.
So I'm like, no, mom, dad, it's not going to happen. I'm going, whether you like it or not. So I make a decision. I tell them I'm going. So all of a sudden they back off and they're like, okay, you know what? Since you're going, you know what? We actually are supporting you. So they wanted to they switched their position. They're like, yeah, we will pay your ticket and everything like that. So in the end, they end up supporting me like right before I'm leaving. And they're like, yeah, we're gonna, we don't really like what you're doing, but if this is what you want, you do it. So I end up in India.
MashaAllah.
Alhamdulillah.
And that's where you Islamic studies.
No. So it starts in India, but then the struggle, like you said, it's not linear. It's not a linear process. So my coming back to Islam was not a linear process. My studying Islam was not a linear process. So, So I go into India. I get there. Just summarizing some of the things. I get there and
this is the same madrasa you visited with your father.
Same, yes, but let me explain something.
They put on the facade when you visit.
When you visit a place, right? It's like this university researcher coming from like Harvard, going into like some random desert land, right? And they come in with all their supplies and stuff, and they walk in and they see all the people. They're like, this is so interesting. These people live a primitive lifestyle, and look at the type of food that they eat. They'll sit down, like have a meal, like, oh, this is very interesting food. And so, but at the end of the day, you're just gonna go and live back in your hotel, and you're gonna fly back, and that's it. It's totally different lifestyle for you. So that's what my visit was like. Oh, this looks pretty nice. Everything
exotic,
looks exotic. Yeah, exactly. So like it's a romanticized version of like everything looks pretty cool. You sit on the floor during classes. This is going to be really interesting. But when you get there, it's just totally different. When you have to live in that environment, it's just totally different. Especially if you're coming from Orange County, right? So
yeah, Orange County is a very nice suburb here in SoCal.
Yes,
so that's
yeah. I have a cousin in England. They're like, oh, there was a show called Orange County. is it true that you guys pay like $10 for a bottle of water in like Newport Beach or something like that? I'm like, no, that's a little bit exaggerated.
$6.
It's about $6. Exactly. So the thing is, people even know now about it because of the show. They know about this Orange County. You know, it's pretty like a nice posh area. It's supposed to be a good area.
Yeah.
So I'm coming from. That's my whole life is spent here. Okay?
Yeah.
So born and raised here, grew up here. I visited different parts of the world, but you know,
You didn't live it like that.
you live in a 4-star, 5-star hotel.
Yeah.
Right. I had visited India. When we visited India, we literally stayed in the hotel that used to be a palace converted into a hotel. Right, so that's where we're staying. So you live in there, like in Jaipur. It's like this used to be like the palace of the prince or pasha or whatever, and then we turned it into like a 5-star hotel now. So if you're living there, but then you go to the village like in the day, and you're like, wow, this is really interesting how these people eat like their lentils and their rice, and let's join them for a meal. Like, yeah, I've experienced India. No, you have not experienced India until you live there. Like you're living with the people, and you're there. So I get there, I arrive. And my dad is very worried. He's concerned. He's like, what's going to happen and this and that. So he calls in one of his contacts, a contact of a contact, and says, hey, somebody knows someone in that school. Identify, hey, there's an American student coming. Please give him some special attention. So they're like, okay, we're going to take care of this guy. We're going to give him special treatment. So here's the special treatment, okay? Yeah. And see, for them, for them, it's not like what you're thinking. Maybe it's for them. It's special treatment from their perspective. Special treatment from their perspective is this: I go in and they're like, we're gonna keep you in the guest house. Nobody besides like VIPs stay in the guest house. Okay, so I'm like wow, I'm in the guest house. This is cool. Like in the VIP guest house. The VIP guest house was like this. The first night I arrive, okay, I get there. There's like 12 or 16 beds across in one room, and one light stays on, and I go under my blanket, I go to sleep, I wake up, and I wake up throughout the night. There's mosquitoes just literally biting me throughout the entire night. Right, my face is puffed up completely, and there's like just this line of just mosquitoes. And they're not attacking anyone else. They're only attacking me. They know that I'm American, right? So they knew I was coming.
Fresh blood.
Exactly. So they're like just right above me. They only hover above me. They don't go to anyone else. So I'm like, okay, this is the worst night of my life. I'm like, this is horrible. And they're like, don't worry. You're staying in the VIP room. We don't want to move you to your dorm room yet. We want you to enjoy. I'm just like, if this is enjoyment, okay, this is a problem, right? So I'm sitting there living in the guest house. Your room is not ready yet. We're going to give you a special room. There's normally 6 people to a room. I'm getting one with 2 people to a room, special VIP room. I'm like, okay, great. So I'm living there, going. 1 week passes, I'm inside the guest house. People told me, be very careful of your diet, watch what you eat, and this and that. I went to REI. I bought military grade water purification.
Iodine stuff.
Yeah, no, iodine is like primitive. We're talking like top of the line. It like you like zap the water or something like that. It can even kill some type of
you can just get water off the ground.
You can get water off the ground. You mix it in there. You purify your water. So I'm like, this is awesome. So one guy told me, I'm taken care of. He goes, no, we're gonna get you some bottled water because you're a foreigner, you're an American. We'll take care of it for you. I'm like, okay, I appreciate that. Here's the money. Get water I need. So brings me bottles of water, a 6-pack of giant 1-liter bottles of water. I come in there, first time I try and drink it, it just stinks. It reeks, right? And I'm just like, what the heck? This this smells so bad. It's like you've been using a plastic bottle for like a year, and that it starts to smell. It's that smell. So I'm like, well, it's bottled water. It's brand new. It's got to be okay. And I just keep on drinking it. I'm just like almost vomiting. And I tell this guy, I'm like, something doesn't feel right about this water. And the guy goes and smells it, and he's like, oh my God. He's like, the guy's ripped us off. Sometimes this happens in stores where they just use old bottles and they repackage them with normal water. So
what the hell?
Yeah. So the first day I arrived, I've been ripped off with the water that I got. I got water that has been bottles that have been used for like years, repackaged with normal water. So I got gypped day 1. I got mosquito bite, on the same day 1. So I'm sitting in the guest house, very miserable. Okay, one week passes by. Okay, I think I arrived on a Friday, so I didn't have to pray Jummah that day because I was traveling. And then 1 week passes by, I haven't showered yet. I'm thinking about that sermon that and I'm like, that sermon, I need to shower. And I'm a guy like, I need my shower every day. I can't function. Maybe that's
that's
bad
how
thing.
it is.
That's how it is in America,
that's
right?
How it is in America. You shower in the morning
You
or
shower,
in the evening.
and I need a shower or I feel horrible. So I'm sitting there and I'm sweating and I'm like, and it's winter time. It's freezing. There is no heater. VIP house, there is no heater. Heater doesn't exist.
You have walls. That's the VIP.
That's the VIP. You have walls, exactly. So I go in there and I'm like, okay. I go in the shower. I'm like, it's too cold, man, to take off my clothes. This is like freezing. And then the shower is a bucket shower. So you're gonna put water. It's gonna go into a bucket. I don't even know how to use a bucket shower, right? What do you do exactly? Like, yeah, you scoop up the water and you kind of like pour it on yourself. I'm like, okay, I can do that. So I'm waiting. Every time I go, I'm like, it's too cold. It's too cold. A few days before Jummah, I walk in there and I see this, and at that time I was very scared of roaches and spiders. Two things I don't like. So I walk in there, I see this giant spider. It's like this big, and it's like right next to the handle. And I'm like, no, hell no. this is not happening. So I walk out. Finally, Jummah comes. And I'm like, all right, I haven't showered in a week. It's been 7 days. I haven't showered. I'm stinking. I'm sweating. It's Jummah. I have to shower now. I have to do something. So I'm going in there. I don't care. I'm going to face that spider. I'm going to get this guy. So I go in there, got my clothes. Everything's ready. I go in there. I see the spider, kind of chase him off. He's still there waiting for me. He waited the whole week for me, by the way. So go in there, chase him off. I go to turn on the water. There's no water. Water's done. And I'm like, what the heck? Why is the water done? So I asked the people. They're like, it's Jummah, man. Don't you know? If you want water on Jummah day, usually the water's done by around 8 a.m. You're late to the game. It's like 9 or 10 a.m. Water gets done. You should have showered early, like before Fajr or after Fajr. Otherwise, the water is finished. You have to wait till tomorrow. So I'm just like, I've been one whole week without a shower. I go for Jummah without a shower. And I'm like, this is what life is going to be like. Like, this is what I'm experiencing. I get into my dorm room. I brought a bunch of granola bars with me. People said you have to accustom yourself to the food. So I've been eating granola bars for an entire week. Okay, I have all the trash saved up in my suitcase. I'm collecting it in a bag. So I'm like, I got all this trash. I'm looking around the campus.
There's no trash.
There's no trash can. So I'm just trying to figure out. I'm like, where do they keep the trash cans? So finally, I have a roommate. My roommate starts explaining to me how like life works over here because he's Indian, and I'm like, by the way, I have a question about where do I throw my trash? He goes, the trash, you just throw it outside. It's outside, and I'm like, I didn't see any trash can. He goes, no, it's just outside. I'm like, what do you mean outside? He goes, no, just throw it outside and it'll be taken care of. People don't explain very much. They don't explain in detail. So I'm like, what does it mean it's going to be taken care of? Oh, someone's going to come and he's going to take care of it. I'm like, oh, I got it. You have a trash collecting service. So you leave it outside on a certain day and the guy's going to come and collect it for you. He goes, yeah, just throw it outside. I said, okay, alhamdulillah. So I throw it outside. Finally, I'm like, the trash is sitting outside. Every day we walk out, the trash is all trash. Plastic, everything just sitting outside. We have to walk by this trash every day. I'm like, where's the trash guy? You said the trash guy is coming. We're walking in trash. Right? This is outside the school, the whole street, every street is lined literally up to this table in trash. That's the way the city is. Okay?
It's an Islamic school.
That's the city.
That's the city.
And in this Islamic school, I'm like, but we got to be better than this. I'm like, there's no way. This is Islamic school. This is not going to happen, right? So we're walking by the trash, and he goes, no, it's because school hasn't started yet. So you know what? The trash guy's not here yet. So he's late. He's a little bit late. He's a few days late. I said, okay, fine. So then finally, I find out, the trash guy's here. I'm like, alhamdulillah, I knew it, man. I knew it. Alhamdulillah. Trash guy arrived. He's going to pick up the trash. Man, this guy's like days late. We've been walking in trash. He comes up. He lights a fire, lights the trash on fire in front of the room, all the plastic, everything, and he leaves. And it just burns. So the whole day, the trash is just burning inside in front of my room, and it's plastic burn. I mean, it's
that is not healthy.
Extremely unhealthy.
and
Forget for the environment, we are inhaling all these fumes, right? And I'm just like,
the trash.
You gotta be kidding me, man. Like,
he's an arsonist.
This is, I'm like, this is his job. Like, you pay him for this? Like,
I could have done this.
Like, I could have lit it myself, man. So I was just like, for me, this is like massive culture shock, right? So I'm just getting to the point. I'm like, look, man, Look, I need to like recalibrate myself. Okay, last time I visited this school, things were looking good. I saw the English library, awesome books on Islamic studies across the board. So I'm like, man, let me just go to the library. I'm gonna chill out and go to the library. English section. The English section? Oh, that's not open for students. It's only for researchers and professors. I'm like, why? I read English. Oh, the English books are very expensive, right? So, because it's a poor country. So I don't have any access to English books. My Arabic is not fluent enough to read the Arabic books. So I'm sitting there, I'm going through this curriculum. Culture shock going on. It's to the point where school starts, I start to learn almost the same subjects. Grammar, Islamic law.
Oh, boy.
The students who are there, they're not interested in being there. And most of them are not very serious. Now, again, in the higher levels, there's a lot more seriousness. But I'm sitting in the lower levels, right? So I'm sitting there, I'm trying to study, I'm getting my food, just so many things I'm going through. Like my food, you know, I have too many stories to share, right? There's a lot of stuff going on, and it just makes life very, very difficult for me. Teachers don't show up on time. Some teachers don't even show up for the entire year. So I had one
Wait,
for
what?
the whole year.
Wait, what?
The whole year.
Who taught you?
So it's just, on that subject, this guy, he showed up. Actually, in my year, he showed up a little bit more. In the third year students, the guy shows up for 1 week, doesn't show up for the rest of the year, and shows up for the last week. He shows up for the first week and the last week of school. So, and you have to be in class for attendance.
Who's taking it? Like the TA? There's a TA?
There's like a TA or something, or a student is appointed as TA. So everyone has got to go to class.
Take more tea?
Yeah, I'll take some more tea. So everyone goes to class. You're going to get marked that you're present. You're going to sit there, wait for the teacher. He's not going to come. You're going to chill out, socialize with the guy, and then you're going to leave. Just like, this is not Madrasa Nizamiya, right? Again, my thing is like, what's going on with these standards? So this is bothering me, right? The food is bothering me. I mean, the food is conceptually everything's looking good. Sheikh Abul Hasan al-Nadwi, he made a new policy where food is going to be sent to your room, delivered to you, so that you can keep on studying. He wants these students to be like top notch, right? What happened was Nadwa used to be a really top elite school in like the 60s. Then enrollment expanded tremendously and kind of the standards went down, right? But it's still a very good school in terms of the research, but I'm not at the research level. I'm sitting at the very basic level. Yeah. So food comes in, and guess what you get for food? Every day you get the same food. Rota. You get a naan, you know, like the naan bread. You get dal, which is lentils. You get rice. And you're supposed to get some meat, because I have an upgraded food schedule, which we paid extra for, a food plan. And what actually happens is all of that meat never makes it to you, because during Zuhr prayer is when they start dishing out the food. So all the students go to the prayer. Obviously, we're supposed to be praying. We're in an Islamic university. While we're in prayer, the servants or whatever, the people serving the food, they go and put the food inside the thing. So about maybe 20% or 30% or more of the students, they skip the Zuhr prayer
to go get the meat.
They go to the food guys and they kind of like pressure them or threaten them or pay them off or whatever it means. All the meat's going to come into our things. All the meat is done. We get like the bone that's left over, right? So I'm getting this bone. I'm getting my rice. I'm getting my lentils. It's enough to survive, right? But what bothers me is not so much the food.
It's the fact that you paid for something. You're supposed to get it.
It's not even that. It's the fact that, again, I'm coming from... at that time, I'm coming from, hey, people's got to be serious in Islamic school, right? So I'm like, these people are supposed to be here, and they're skipping prayer to go and get the meat. Like, it's bothering me. For me, again, you have to keep in mind
the integrity of it.
In my mind, I have like this idealistic version of what the ummah is supposed to be like. At least what the Islamic university is supposed to be like. Now, in retrospect, I understand all of this. I look at it from a very different angle. In retrospect, I'm like, look. Not everyone goes to school because they want to be there, right? That's every field, every career. Islamic school is no different. But that's what I'm going through. So it's becoming stressful for me. It's bothering me. The type of, they're switching curriculums. People are not that interested. And then, one day, one of our teachers makes a mistake in some basic math on inheritance. And I'm getting frustrated. I'm like, man, look, like, you messed up on the fractions. Like, I'm computer science major, right? Like my math is pretty decent. Like, you didn't do this problem correctly. And he just, you know, kind of like waved it off. He's like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, look, I don't know my Islamic studies, but I know my math, right? you messed up on the math, right? And he just kind of played it off. So I'm just like, you know, again, everything is affecting me, right?
Yeah.
So some of the teachers, you know, explanations as affecting me. Some of the teachers are amazing. Some of the things are bothering me, right? So I get a private teacher. He's teaching me. I go at nighttime to his house. While I'm on my way, all of a sudden there's a moose or an ox or something like that on campus that basically like intercepts me and like blocks my path. And I'm just like, what the heck is this? What the heck is going on? Like, I can't get to my teacher's house who lives on campus, okay? Because I've been intercepted by this like ox.
By a beast of burden.
By a beast of burden. At nighttime, the lights are not functioning properly, and I didn't know what it was in the beginning. So it makes this
I'm
weird
honestly surprised.
sound, right?
I'm surprised you just didn't you haven't quit.
I'm about to. I'm gonna tell you about to quit, right? So I get it. It sounded like this crazy. It made this crazy sound. I didn't live on a farm, right? So it made this crazy. I thought it was. I'm like, oh, dude, I believe in jinn now 100%. Like, this is a jinn, and the jinn is following me, and I found out like it was an animal, and it was literally obstructing my path exactly to get to my teacher's house. And I would try to move around it, and it would go around, and I'm just like, what the heck is going on, man? So like I literally like had to like, you know, outsmart it, run that way, and then I sprinted the other way, got to my teacher's class, and I'm like, what the heck was that? Oh yeah, that's like a bison or something like that. I'm like, hold on, why is there a bison on campus at nighttime? Outside of your house? Why is that there? They're like, oh yeah, you know, they keep them in the back, you know, in the kitchen, so probably one just escaped, and you know, it just happened to, you know, it caught you, like, you know, it liked you for some reason. I'm just like, you know, and I'm looking out the window, I'm like, I'm not going back down there. Like, you need to get this thing out of here before it's gonna attack me. So just like weird stories like that. I'm just dealing with this on a regular basis. So it gets to a point where I'm just like, you know what, I can't handle this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. So I'm like, I'm quitting. So I leave. I come back to America, and I'm like, my parents are like, see, we told you so. Told you so. All the told you so's in the world are like there, and I'm just sitting there like kind of in like semi-depression. I rejoined the pre-IOK, what it used to be, and I'm like, I'm doing that, but again, still their classes are not up to that level. So one of my friends from Nadwa in India convinces me. He's like, look, you need to come back. Like, you're not doing anything. You're not doing anything with your life. You're not, you're not progressing. Either you give this up completely, or you come back, because there's no other place you're gonna go.
You can't just be in limbo. Like that's.
Yeah, exactly. I can't.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So while I'm doing that, I'm doing a bunch of things. I'm doing some Islamic classes with like the pre-IOK, before IOK was there, and then I get a job as an Islamic high school teacher, Muslim high school teacher, just on the side, a few hours. And then I'm just studying all day by myself. So I resume the curriculum. I'm like, okay, you know what? I will continue. So I keep studying the curriculum. I'm in touch with some of the people over there. I'm like, where are we in the curriculum? I'm like, eventually I'm going to come back someday. I'm like, I need a break right now, but I'm going to come back. A few months later, I'm keeping the curriculum. I'm like going into massive depression. And I'm like, you know, I can't do this. I'm going back. So I get my ticket. I fly back there again. I'm still enrolled in the school technically. I had left in the middle. So I come back. I'm where everyone else is. And I'm just like, wait a minute, you know, what I had studied on my own, I'm kind of like more advanced than some of the students here. I'm like, what's going on here? They're like, you know, just finish the curriculum. My friends are telling me just do it. So number of things happen. Number one, there's this guy, one of the teachers on campus. He calls me. It's a very tribal society, right? So he calls me in and he's like, you know, you need to come visit me, and I want to talk to you about some things. So some students warn me, and they're like, he's trying to recruit you into his little gang. And what's going to happen is he's going to basically, it's like politics. He's going to control you. Then you're going to become like his murid, like his, it's like a cultish thing, right? You're going to become his follower.
Spiritual abuse.
Exactly, right? So it's like, you're going to have to come in here, and he's going to own you then. So I'm like, what should I do? He's like, well, you have a big dilemma, because if one of these guys invites you for tea in his private gathering, he doesn't invite people normally. So if you refuse, you've just made an enemy, and if you accept, you've just like joined the gang basically. Like you've taken your first step. So I'm like, this is so ridiculous, man. Like I came in here to do Islamic studies, not to like play these politics games. And I'm like in my hardcore phase, like very hardcore. Everything is, little things are bothering me. Like I go in there, you know, the principal, everyone stands up when the principal walks in the room. And I'm like the pseudo Salafi kind of guy walking in there like, you know what, man, I ain't standing for anyone. So I'm like the guy who just sits there, everyone else stands up, and I'm like, I ain't standing up. I got a hadith to back it up, you know, like I'm not getting up, you know. So I'm in that really hardcore phase, right? So again, that's partly my problem. Not everyone's going to experience this, right? So I tell this guy, I'm like, you know what, no, thanks for the invite, but I'm not coming. So now this guy becomes my enemy. So now, and he's one of the teachers, and one of the senior teachers, a very powerful teacher. So I'm like, this is so ridiculous. Like, this kind of politics has to go on. So now this guy starts to get some of his people, like, to cause a problem for me. And they're like, look, they're going to cause a problem for you. I'm like, I'm just here to study, man.
This is like high school all over.
This is like this is like high school. Like, what is this? You know, like little kid stuff, you know? So now,
what are they going to do? Take my meat from my lunch? It's too late.
It's already gone.
It's already gone.
It's already gone. Exactly. So what ends up happening is one of their guys puts an accusation and spreads a rumor that I am an American spy. Right? They go, why is he an American spy? Because he's visited India 3 times. He went once the first time he came to visit, second time he comes, and then he leaves, goes and reports information to whoever, and then comes back for the 3rd time. I'm like, this is such a, you know, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. First of all, what am I going to spy on exactly? Like, well, what is there to spy on? Number 2, like, look at my background, man. Like, do I fit like the profile of a spy? Like, you know, so
and
there's
couldn't just send an email. I had to go back.
Yeah, seriously, you know, like I had to fly back. Exactly. So I'm like, so now I got a problem with some of the students going and spreading a rumor that I'm an American spy. Just is really bothering me. I'm like, this is so stupid. Okay, number 1. Number 2 is the biggest thing. So I go, the second time I go there, I start eating out with like my friends. School is on lockdown. You can only leave a few times, or you can only leave half a day once a week. So we figured out a way to kind of bribe the guards, because like students know what to do. So you buy 2 biryanis. You know what biryani is? Yeah. So you buy 2 biryanis, and that covers you for a whole month. You know, for the security guards, you can get out whenever you want. You can come back whenever you want.
For a whole month?
Whole month. Yeah, I told you. That's a cheap
bribe.
The cheap standard of living, you know. So 2 biryanis cover you for the whole month. So I start going out and eating at all these different restaurants. And one of these restaurants, I meet this guy who is kind of like a semi-gangster, but had joined the school as well. He hated the school, always complaining about the school, and I just kind of clicked with. I'm like, I like this guy, dude. Like, you know, anyone complains about the school, I want to socialize with you. Like, I'm down with you. So we get together, and it turns out this guy's like a little bit too much of, a little too aggressive. You know, he's been getting in fights at school and stuff. So he takes me out to a place. We get some food, and then he goes to the guy, the chef in the back, and he takes like, I think he had a toothpick or some kind of metal toothpick, and he puts it against the guy's back. And he's like, you see my friend over there? He's from America. You're going to make this food up to proper standards, right? So I'm just like, man, you don't do that to a guy. Like, you can do whatever you want. So he makes this food, and my suspicion, okay, I can't prove this. My suspicion is that guy did something to the food, okay? Because right after that, I get typhoid. I get typhoid, and the thing is, typhoid is, if you don't know what typhoid is, it's a type of food poisoning. Your temperature goes to 104 degrees and it stays there, and you have no appetite. So you don't want to eat anything, you don't want to drink anything. So I'm sitting in my room, okay? I'm by my room.
Very treatable, but not in your.
Not over there.
Not over there.
Not over there. No. So and the thing is, so I'm sitting there. I'm just literally, I have a fever, 104 degrees, nonstop. I'm taking Tylenol, goes down, comes right back up, 104. This continues for several days. I'm not going to class. I'm sitting under the blanket. I'm not drinking water. I'm not eating food because I don't feel like it. I'm just drinking green tea. My friend is making green tea for me, and that's it. So finally, I get to a point. They're like, you should try and get out, get some air. I'm like, look, I'm dying here. Like, this is really, really bad. So my friend, he's like, you should do something. Finally, after a few days, I'm like, look, you know what? I'm done, man. I think I'm gonna die here. just call 911 and we'll get out of here. And he just starts laughing at me. I'm like, dude, I'm like messed up. Why are you laughing? He's like, man, you still don't understand. This is a guy from England, by the way. This is Sheikh Uwais Namazi, by the way. So this was a guy who really, you know, helped me a lot, took care of me. I'll never forget everything he's done for me. So he's a guy who's coming from a Western country, so I can relate to him. He's helping take care of me. So he laughs at me and he's like, you don't understand where you are. There is no 911 over here. You don't just call an emergency and like an ambulance is gonna show up, man. Like you are not in America anymore. You're in a different part of the world. So I'm like, well, what happens to people when they're like this sick and they're like on the bed? He's like, I remember this exactly how he told me. And he's totally serious. He's like, they die. I was just like, they just die? Like, it's like, yeah, it's not such a big deal. It's like, this is not America. It's like, you're on your bed and you die. And people will do janazah and they'll make dua for you. And I'm just kidding.
You just need an IV and some...
I'm like freaking out. I'm like, what in the world? Like, did you just die? I'm like, he's like, yeah. I'm just thinking, this is what's going to happen to me. I'm like, this is a complete failure of a mission. Like, I have not got my Arabic up to par. I have not gotten most of my questions answered. I'm like, this is going to be the dumbest, most useless, pointless death like ever. So that's what I'm going through. So then I said, there's got to be something you can do, man. Like, can you like save me somehow? He's like, you know, I can call one of the sheikhs and he's got a connection and we can get you to like a nice hospital. But he's like, I'm telling you what's going to happen in that hospital. It's the hospital may be worse for you than like you just kind of, you know, being here.
It might reuse the needle like they reuse the bottle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so and he's like, I don't know if you want to do that. I'm like, at this point, man, just do anything. I need to get out of here. So they send me a taxi, take me to like the top hospital of that area, which is not very top. So I go in there, they put a needle, they couldn't even find my vein. Then they're like, they like take it out, like blood is squirting all over the sheet. So like I'm sitting there with like blood on my bed sheets, right? And then the first thing they come in there and they're like, oh, what kind of room would you like? I'm like, what do you mean?
A VIP.
That's the, you know what it is? Would you like a regular room, a fan room, or an air conditioning room? So I'm like, what? Like these are the options. So my friend Uwais, you know, he's like a half joker. So he comes in there. He's like, man, look, I'm gonna be visiting you the most. Dude, we're going with AC. I'll pay half of it, man. Like, because there's no AC on campus, right?
Yeah.
So he's like, I'm paying half of it. We're getting the AC room. I'm like, all right, fine. He's like, trust me, it's gonna be better for you. So we get the AC room, sitting in their hospital. All they do is pump you with IV. That's their entire treatment. There's nothing else to do. I got blood like on my bed sheets, not being cleaned. It's just sitting there, right? And I'm just sitting on an IV for like, I don't know how many days, right? And I'm going through like depression. I'm like, this is like the sacrifice. This is what I get, you know? So because of these reasons, you know, long story short, I'm like, it's time for me to leave. So I leave India and I come back to America in a state of semi-depression, get a job again as in computer science. And while I'm sitting in that job, I'm like, you know what? I can't do this. I'm not supposed to be here. So I end up leaving that job again, right, for another job. And I end up going for Hajj. From Hajj, I go to Egypt, spend a year in Egypt. From Egypt, I end up going to France for 3 years. And then I end up coming back. And that's how I finished my studies.
MashaAllah. How many years is that total?
So that was 5.
5 years.
5, and then I went again to England afterwards, got master's degree. So
okay. And you're pretty, like, what was the degree in? Like just Islamic studies or?
No, Sharia. Islamic law and theology. Yeah,
okay.
Sharia.
So Sheikh, I want to pull another lesson out of this. And this is something I've seen in a lot of teachers when I talk to them about their overseas studies, is it's not fancy and there's no glory in it. It's not, as you said, you're romanticized, right?
Yep.
So I find a lot of people when they go overseas, even my wife and I, we did an Arabic studies program. Very short, 9 months. It was in Texas. It's in America. Cockroach infested apartment for 6 out of the 9 months. I lost internet at the last 3 months. Like, you know, every little mini struggle that Allah could throw at us, right? They're not that big a deal in the grand scheme of things. But I find that when they go and study this deen for Islam, Allah doesn't make it necessarily easy on you. It's not like, oh, life's good. Now I'm just going to study a full time and everyone's going to love me and I'll come back to this glorious life or whatever it is.
Yep.
And I think there's something in that. Maybe you can comment on it. Why do you think there's a struggle aspect with studying Allah's deen? Shouldn't he make it easy for us, so to speak?
Yeah, I think there's two aspects. One aspect is there's got to be a struggle, because if you're supposed to get all this reward, you're supposed to get all this benefit of having a deep understanding of the religion. People who go and seek knowledge are on the path towards paradise. Allah will make the path towards paradise easy. All those ahadith and verses about the greatness and excellence of knowledge, it's not going to come for free. There's going to be a price. So in the past, people like Imam Bukhari, all these people, they used to travel months. Their life was in danger while they're going through deserts. Imam Ghazali himself was attacked, in a caravan. He was robbed. All his notes were taken away. So that challenge has got to be there. So this idea that you're not going to encounter challenges just because, and that's the notion that a lot of people have, a notion that I had. Since I made that one step, right, of like, okay, I want to be a committed Muslim. Once I made that one step, now everything should just be smooth sailing downhill from here. That notion is wrong. That notion is very, very wrong. It's not that there's not going to be progress, but a lot of it is you have to make sacrifices. You have to be ready to struggle. So that's number one. Number two is that people oftentimes will glamorize these other countries. Muslim country, Islamic university, even some teachers will do that, so some of them will put it down and they'll criticize, that's kind of more of my style, just to give people a reality check. And other ones will just kind of be like, no, let's not tell them the bad things, otherwise they're gonna not be motivated enough to go there. So there's kind of like a marketing of, Medina University, it's in Medina, and Darul Uloom Deoband, it's a 200-year-old institution, or Al-Azhar University, it's like this. And what's going to happen is when you glamorize that too much, people's expectations have kind of been lifted, and then they get broken. I think that's very dangerous, right? Mm-hmm. And it depends where you're coming from. So if you're someone who's coming from, I keep saying Orange County, like if you're someone who's coming from a very middle class American lifestyle, and you're not used plumbing. To that, yeah, exactly. You grew up with air conditioning and heating, you grew up with running water, okay, and you're gonna have a very difficult time adapting to any circumstance. If you went there to study medicine, okay, and you're in medical school, you would have a difficult time. Yeah. So that's just the nature of this cultural shift, and that needs to be pointed out to people. And you need to understand. You learn who you are when you're put into circumstances like that. So what I do say though in retrospect is, again, my mentality for people is, number one, if you're someone like me who was just trying to learn Islam, right? Oftentimes you need to have it's good to have a good understanding of Islam to be able to deal with the challenges that you're going to be facing. So this is my problem is when people are only teaching Arabic, like let's say someone goes to learn Arabic. Yeah. You're only learning Arabic, and let's say you have very little knowledge of Islam. And you go through the challenges that I have. You're stuck with typhoid, for example. You get sick, you get in the hospital. What did you learn in the last 6 months that's going to help you get through the struggle of the health issue that you're going through? Nothing. Because what are you going to do? Conjugate verbs, Arabic verbs? Be like, I'm gonna console myself by doing some conjugations. That's not going to help you. But had you taken, let's say, a class on spirituality or tazkiyah, you talk about the importance of having patience. You have all these verses you have explained to you. You have all these hadith that are explained to you. Now you're like, okay, I know kind of how to react, how I'm, at least theoretically, how I'm supposed to react. Yeah. Right? So that's why kind of like, for me, the curriculum should
That's where the Islam is learned.
That's where the Islam is learned. So the Islam part is the key. The specialization part can be like the Arabic and all that other stuff. That's why for my curriculum that I made, the Islam part is in there in the beginning, because you need that. Because if you go through struggles, you're going to have to, you need some knowledge to help you process through those struggles. If you don't have that, it's just going to be another problem. So, I mean, that's one thing that people need to understand before going in. And if they're already there, they already got that. They're ready for the struggle. They understand what they're going to go through. They understand that it's not an ideal golden age Islamic society. You're not walking into Madrasa Nizamiya. You're not going to have, Fakhruddin al-Razi and Imam Ghazali and Ibn Rushd as your teachers. Okay, then, maybe you're prepared for that. But one last thing I'd say is that the idea of Islamic studies now, you don't have to travel. you can do a lot of this in America, right? I still think there's a valuable component for that life experience. Honestly, when I look back, my experience in India was one of the most important experiences of my life. It was a very difficult experience. I wouldn't want to go in there without knowing, without knowing that I'm there for life experience. But if someone understands that this life experience is going to shape you as a person, and they can go in knowing that it's going to be like this, is going to be tough. Here's some examples of what can happen. I think that life experience sets people apart. Those who just academically study Islam versus those who study Islam and have this life experience, right? So I don't regret any of that when I look back. When I'm living through it, I'm like, this is the worst experience of my life. But that's the way life is, You always look back and you see that there's an immense wisdom that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
And it makes you a stronger person.
Much stronger person,
Yeah.
And that's why, a lot of times people are like, you're one of the few imams who like wants to be an imam or like hasn't just keep changing jobs all the time. And I'm like,
because you already saw the tough part.
I have a very high tolerance level.
Yeah.
They're like, how do you deal with these masjid boards? I'm like, masjid boards, man. I had a guy trying to recruit me to become his murid, put a rumor on me. I had a guy who, is threatening another cook, giving me typhoid. I mean, the stuff that I dealt with, I'm like, these uncles are annoying, but they're not as like not that I can't handle them. Right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of nice when you look at those things in that perspective.
Definitely. I know we didn't really get a chance to go into our main topic. Are you still okay for staying, or are you?
I'm good. Let's extend. Inshallah.
You're good. We can extend. Alhamdulillah.
Part 2.
You have to tune into the next episode. Alhamdulillah.
I'll split it, inshallah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess we can do that because I mean this has been 2 hours now. This is going to be our longest podcast.
Mashallah.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah, things are going good.